and welcome to Thursday with a Friend. My name is Lawrence, or Punk with Toys, Punk. But you guys know that because you're tuning in. Unless you're tuning in to hear my guest, Brick something. How are you?
I'm that guest. I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm great. Uh, Thank you for coming on.
Ah,
I know you recently had me on your show, and it had to be a short one, so we didn't get to talk too much music. And I have a feeling we might get a little more into that today.
I was gonna say we didn't get to talk music. I think that's most of what we talked about. But
We
yeah,
didn't get to talk as long as
totally.
I know some people want to talk toys and stuff. Listen, talk toys enough.
Toys.
I'm
Toys.
sure. I'm sure we'll get into some toys. We always do.
Hmm.
But if you're wondering my thoughts on the GI Joe stuff, tune in tomorrow. I'm going to be doing a show with Dreadnought Ryan, Aaron the Toy Enhancer, who I already see in the stream, and Bees Battleground, and we'll break it down there. And I'm sure there's someone else that you can watch. But why would you want to watch anyone else? I have Brick here. But this is he's probably the best looking guy in toy tubing and punk rock right now.
Wow. Thank you for that. Damn, I could just
You
go
have like
home.
perfect. You have like
Bye.
perfect hair. So anyway,
Whew. Well, I'm glad. I'm glad it's still here. Sort of. Look, it's still
well,
there. Yeah.
mine keeps getting. Well,
Oh
it's
well.
going.
Yeah.
We'll just say it's going. All right.
Poor subject. My bad.
When I shave my head with when I shave my head with the razor, it's so stubbly. It's that 5 o'clock shadow no matter what. And then I had my hair, it was 10 inches long, and yet the back, and this was a few years ago, was
Uh-huh.
like this big bald spot. And it's like, how is that even possible that when I shave my head with the razor, it looks like you have a full head of hair because it grows in 6 hours. But when you grow it out long, it's like, that is one big bald spot that nobody told me about. Uh,
Cruel. The cruel nature of humanity. Yeah, I caught some of your early like skating videos on the channel. I was like, "Oh, dude, he's totally got long hair."
yeah, I
You had it
love.
like under a hat, but yeah, yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, you would see it. I love taking it off and letting it kind of like flap around. What was actually the funniest part is my buddy Eric that I would skate with. He's a little bit older than me. I'd always make jokes about how his uh his bald spot is blinding me, and then I catch a few videos and I'm like, son of a bitch. But that's karma for you.
Pretty much.
But you know
Pretty
what? If you
much.
can dish it, you better be able to take it. So
Yeah. Yeah.
let's quickly
Uh,
say hi to the chat. Not as busy as a Monday night, but I know there's a lot of stuff going on right now. Say hi to Shark
it's me,
Eyes.
dude. I scared all your normal folks away. Your normal
Don't
fans.
worry, that's
They're like,
they'll come.
"Brick, something."
Well, listen, people need to know who Brick is because a rare Friday off. So here I am. Good day, Punk, Brick, and the rest of the scallywags. So he is in
Supper.
the future right now. He is in Australia.
Mhm.
So he
Mhm.
is in the future. So it is Friday for you, isn't it? Matthew is in the house again, the moderator. So what he says goes. Nolan, who is tries to be in every chat possible. We
Tries
got
to or
Carol.
is.
I like that Carol is watching this and not Oz's. Uh, and then Aaron, the toy enhancer.
Oh, that's right. It's Thursdays. Thursdays are rough, man.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't realize it, but man, you got to step on someone's toes. Unfortunately, if you want to do multiple nights. Uh,
That's all
and
good.
then we have Palpatine here.
Dude, Palpatine.
Yes, Palpatine's in a lot of. He was the actual first channel member, so always a big shout out to him. And then
Somehow he returned.
Tony's figs. And now I know you watch Screen Crush. Do
Who?
you watch Screen
Me?
Crush?
I
Yeah.
totally. Oh, of course. Somehow Palpatine returned. Of course.
Yes.
And Doug. I need
As
a
soon as you
Doug,
said that,
man.
I'm like,
Yeah, totally. Man, I need a Doug. Sorry, I'm here multitasking because you were talking about hair. I was looking for pics, and I was trying to find it. I don't have quite the shaved. I'll find some, but there are some Bic. Um, actually, Gillette Mach 3 brick somethings from back in the day, but that was a
what?
buzz. I'll see if I can find one. Anyways,
Yeah, I use the disposable razors. The I get 2 shaves out of it, basically. Yeah, I get 2 shaves out of it.
Really? You do 2? Just okay.
Yeah, disposable razors. If I can sometimes get a third in, but
Uh-huh.
and it's every other day. It's every
Okay.
other day. But I can feel it on my head. It's it starts to get rough. It starts to hurt. You get little cuts from it. So
I totally was a mock. Welcome to Hair Talk, folks. This is exactly what you tuned in for. But yeah, I did the Mach 3s, and I still swear by. I kind of use them on my face whenever on certain parts. But
oh
and
no,
right
you're right.
the beginning of the lockdown, I totally first time in my life, first and only time in my life, I opted for a mohawk just because like why not?
You
And
could.
it got me back to that Mach 3, and it was a fun return to form. This is long hair brick, but yeah. Sorry,
So
we got on hair.
yeah, it's the Schick Mach 3. That's what I use.
Okay.
Whichever is cheaper. My ex used to always buy the men's because she's like they're like $2 or $3 cheaper, but they're the exact same other than the color.
Okay. Good
And she's
stuff.
like, see, that's how unfair things are. And I'm like,
Thank you
let me
for
check.
this opportunity. This has totally got me to go through my old Facebook, and I found some fun ones. Here's my head in a jar.
Oh,
Here's me standing next to my head in a jar. Have you ever seen anyone do that?
no, but that reminds me of The Walking Dead when they find all those heads in the jar.
Take a picture of yourself, do some Photoshop editing, laminate it, throw it in a jar with water, and that's what you get, folks. And I walked around with it on Halloween. It was rad. Good times.
All right. So let's start with your name. Where does your name come from?
So you can kind of sort of tell by the logo if you ever checked it out, but the
That's
bottom of it looks like a Lego brick.
yep.
Um,
Actually, it looks like
I
a finger pointing.
you sure, and it's a factory because
Yes.
I was big into what they call the AFOL. I'm an AFOL, which is AFOL, or adult fan of Lego, is what they actually call themselves that. I was like, really? That's what we call ourselves? But whatever, I went with it.
They make
And
Trekkie sound
so,
cool.
yeah, exactly. There's AFOLs and TFOLs and KFOLs, so adult fans of Lego, teen fans of Lego, kid fans of Lego. Anywho, so I got really into it, and like the Lego like scene in terms of third party customizing and third party parts, like this was around that time. I think it's like 2006, 2007, 2008, where that stuff started blowing up. Like it was big on Flickr. Like, I remember having a Flickr account, and everyone was sort of doing like, whether it was a blog or whatever. And I had a website, and I was doing like t-shirt designs and stuff. And everyone who was doing something in the Lego community was Brick Arms, Brick Factory. Like these are stuff that actually exist. What are the other Brick Maniacs, Brick Warriors, right? So I was like, Brick something, and that's where I ended up with. I've had it for the longest time. I love that sort of. That was kind of like my return to toys was through Lego back in like. And we'll get into toys later, but like right around college, I started buying Lego, and then I stopped for a bit and got really into it. And that was like the first time I think that was the first time that I was collecting toys where the internet played a big role in the collecting,
Okay.
like the internet community stuff. And so anyway, that's what I ended up with. And I was doing like designs for custom minifigures that other people were making. I was collaborating with folks, and that's where the sort of factory came in, because we were starting to like produce stuff. And I just kept it because yeah, man, it's all about like, that's kind of the roots of it. And yeah, and then the action figures came back in a big way. So brick
Yeah, I mean,
something.
I knew it was a factory because I looked at it, but when you
Mm-hmm.
look at it, it looks like a big giant Hulk Hogan foam finger.
Yeah, dude. Or like the punk rock straight edge 1, 2, 3, go. Yeah, totally. It's all there, man. It's all
What
like comes
what
together.
straight edge were you hanging in? Because
Oh, dude.
That
We can get
sounds like
into it.
H2O Toby stuff.
It was
I
a
like
mix of, positive, posi-core. Like it was a mix. But we'll talk about music, and so, but because I love these conversations. I don't know if you remember, but a long time ago, I forget whose chat it was, but you were in there, and I was like, dude, a punk with toys. Tell me more, because you were mentioning it the other night on Monday, like how you do find a lot of like punks and folks who are either into the music or like other folks who are like really into the scene and did stuff, whether it was bands, record labels, whatever, booking, and in the toy circles, right? So when I saw your name, I was like, hey, dude, tell me more, because it's
yeah, well, and
fun.
again, I've seen other people. There's a guy in he pops in on the Full Force, Ed the Straight Edge. I'm like, oh,
Oh,
I'm like, you straight edge? He's like, not for years, but I was back in like high school. I'm like, and you kept that
and you
name?
kept that name, yeah.
Like, out of all the things that you like, I mean, I don't know. But you know what? I guess
True till
there-
college.
a guy that I work with,
Uh-huh.
he hasn't drank in over 20 years. He's an alcoholic. I mean, he'll tell you. So he goes to
Yep.
AA meetings, and
Mhm.
his screen name that he goes by is Drunken Sailor because he was a sailor. So I guess it makes sense. He doesn't drink anymore. He smokes enough to, you know, more than that chimney smoking out
I
your
was gonna say,
factory there.
he smokes enough to get by. Yeah, no, totally.
But just cigarettes, not like he doesn't do any drugs or anything. But he still goes by Drunken Sailor. So I guess if you're at the straight edge, but I've seen a few little punks, and people have the punk in their name, and you wonder if they actually mean that they're punk. And I've had a bunch of people ask, like, "So are you a punk with toys, or are you a punk with toys?" I'm like, it is a play on words. I mean, I am a punk rocker. Um, it also kind of drives me nuts when someone asks me that says they're into punk,
Mhm.
and they'll ask on a video where they'll see like I have like a Pennywise shirt or a Bad Religion shirt or something. It's kind of like, are you really asking? Like, I don't have like this obscure, local punk band where you're wondering.
Right.
Um, Not that I get mad if someone asks me, but when someone's like, it's like you look at the video they reference, and you're like, did you watch the video? Like,
You're like, no, I have this obscure YouTube channel where I talk about toys while wearing punk rock t-shirts. Punk with toys. Yeah. No, so
now if they
weird.
were the Ramon shirt, you could get away with it because you could buy those anywhere.
Yeah.
So, how
Anyways,
old are you? Do you mind me asking?
I am 47 years young, baby.
Okay. So, and when is your birthday? Are you?
1976. You want
Oh
my
no.
soch? No, I'm
Yeah,
just kidding.
I like to do that for myself first.
Uh,
Um, then I pass it on to everyone else. No, I was just wondering when you turn. I turn 48 at the end of the month.
Oh, I turned 47 in August. So it's
Okay.
no secret because my channel actually started on my birthday in 2022. So August 14th, 2022 is when I started the YouTube thing. So we hit I hit my first year. I guess it's been a while now, but yeah. So I'm a little bit like I'm a year and what is it now? 4 months old on
Yeah.
YouTube.
I was just wondering how close you were. Um, yeah, hitting that 48 really, really soon. So,
Oh, so we're both born in 76 then.
nope.
Oh no. You said April?
No, I will be 48 at the end of the month.
Oh, at the end of
We're
this
in
month. Got
December.
it. You're 77.
We're in December.
75. Yeah.
Yes, right at the end. 4 days before, 4 days after Christmas,
Yep.
3 days before the New Year's.
Yeah, that took me a while, man. That was too much math, but yes.
Okay. And Allison pops in. Brick and Lawrence, two of
Hey.
my favorite YouTubers. Oh, we're toy tubers, not YouTubers. Erica Thurman, same at 47. A lot of people our age, which is kind of crazy, but it's awesome. I think I look at it where I talk to a lot of younger skateboarders, and
Mhm.
they don't realize the ground that myself and other guys my age have paved. And I'm not talking about the pros, but us that don't make money that are still doing it our age. When they're in their 40s, no one's going to think twice about it. Now the
Sure.
people in their 40s now going, oh, you still ride a skateboard? And it's like, yes, I'm not riding some giant mega ramp. I'm not doing 20 stair handrails. You know, um, But yeah, it is. It's crazy that that's how people look at it. But if I was
I
playing
don't know how
basketball,
I don't know how your knees. I mentioned this before, but like I don't know how your knees are still handling it.
they
Like,
don't.
well, sure. So, but you're still doing it. You just like pain? Is that what it is?
Well, okay, so
You're like you
I
want your knees to
skated.
go the way of your car? Is that what's going on?
Hey, the car is fixed. I just got to pick it
Oh,
up. Yeah,
congratulations.
yeah. And if for $2,000, if I could do that to my knees, I would in a heartbeat. Hell, I would do $2,000 for one
Shit.
knee.
Yeah,
No, I actually skated on Friday, and the knees just felt swollen, like going up and down the
yeah.
steps. It's been awful. Working when I walk up some steps, I'm just like, where's the elevator at? So tell me, where did you grow up at? Where were you born at?
I was born in Los Angeles, California. Queen of Angels, baby. A hospital that is no longer a functional hospital, but it is now basically like a TV hospital. Like ER was filmed there and stuff.
Oh wow.
But right off the 101 freeway, I grew up in a place called Downey, California, Downey, Southgate area. Um, for those who are familiar, but it becomes relevant like if we were to talk, talking about the punk thing, just in terms of like the scenes that were there. It's kind of like it's LA County, but not far from the Orange County line. So
Okay.
like you could go to shows and do the LA thing. You could go to shows in Orange County because there was a thriving scene there. You could drive up to Goleta, Santa Barbara, which was like 100 miles away, but that was like the Abolition Records, if you're familiar with that kind of set. And then if you're like really wild, you could drive 100 miles south and go to a San Diego show at the Che Cafe or some other place. So like it was as close as you can get to living in the East Coast on the West Coast when it came to punk. Because I used to do band. I've been in a band that toured, and like that was a thing, man. Whenever we would tour by you guys, it was just like we'd be frustrated because like this is why it's so awesome to be a band on the East Coast, because you had so many different places that you could just jump and do like a weekend tour and hit a bunch of shows and like get out there. Here it's like it's a whole day to get up to San Francisco, right? And there's like so anyway, I don't know how I got on that, but that's where I grew up.
We'll get there.
LA, yeah,
We'll get there.
yeah.
So you grew up in East LA.
LA.
Um,
It's like no, it's not East LA. East LA is like its own unique. People
I
don't
know.
get LA. I'll tell you right now. LA is like unique in the way that it's spread out. So the actual city of LA is like there's the city and then there's the county, and this thing is just spread. Like it doesn't make sense to most people who come from other cities. So it's just like, wait, where does the actual city begin and end? And
Well, I
it's
mean,
a bit nuts.
I think it's like Detroit. People don't really get Detroit.
Mm.
Journey has a song "Born and Raised in South Detroit," right? You know it,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep. Yep.
There is no South Detroit. There's East Detroit. There's North. There's South, or I'm sorry. There's East. There's West. There's North. There's no South. South Detroit is Canada.
That's what happens when you get a dude from Northern California writing lyrics about
But
Detroit.
there's a reason for it.
Okay, tell me more.
So, according to what they said, is that they used to always go on the riff here. And so Journey wrote a song, but the riff,
Oh,
the radio station was in it was in I hate when you get on in Southfield, but they always thought they were in South Detroit. So when they wrote it as South Detroit rather than Southfield. But
uh-huh.
it was wrote because the station
They
used
were
to
there.
always bring them on um before they got big.
Got it.
So they did write it like in like honor of,
Born
but
and
it
raised
really
in
should have been East.
Southfield. Yeah, that doesn't work.
It should have been East Detroit.
Okay,
It
gotcha.
would and again, like you'll hear East Side, which
Uh-huh.
everyone knows East Side because of 8 Mile.
Uh-huh.
And then people go, "What is 8 Mile?" And I go, it's the street that borders the suburbs in Detroit." Is it bad there? Depends on where you're at. If you go to the water, you have $5 million homes on one side, and then you have the ghetto on the other side. And I mean it. In 300 feet, no shit, you go from millionaires to the ghetto. It is the craziest thing you ever see.
We are jumping around, but I will tell you when I was on the road, We did our first US tour. I'd never been to Detroit, and it definitely was eye-opening to kind of see, I'd read about it, knew about sort of like the history of Detroit and sort of the flight of the auto industry and, just a bunch of stuff, but never really understood like what the day-to-day impact of that was. And we were sort of driving through and we're like, yeah, it's a trip to have skyscrapers or giant office buildings with boards and closed off. And we're like, wow, that's a trip. And it was actually different a couple years later. Like we saw there was like, shifts and stuff, but still it's just you learn a lot by traveling this country. You do, by traveling period, but by driving through
Yeah,
this country, you learn a lot and you get a lot of perspective of sort of like
I would
the
imagine. I
country.
mean, even just the trip that I went down to Jersey and then drove down to Baltimore
Mhm.
or Maryland, just seeing like, oh my God, like this. You're driving the Jersey Turnpike, and you're like,
Yep.
oh my God, it's all shipping yards.
Mhm.
All it is shipping yards
Yep.
because you don't think, I guess when you think of beachfront or ocean
Mm,
front, you think of
yeah.
California or
No.
Florida. You don't think, oh, hey, shipments got to come in somewhere.
Well, and they come here too. It's just
Yeah,
that we have the whole coastline, and, like, if you think about here, it's like, yeah, it's really, I mean, it's perspective, it's learning things, realizing, like, this state is a trip to recognize, like, all the different industries as well as the amount of farming that happens in the state, but then also, as you point out, we're on the water, so everything coming from Asia is coming here, and, like, think about all the massive ports we have here, and you think about the big urban areas.
yeah,
Well, it's no accident that San Diego is a big urban area, that LA and everywhere else, but between LA, Long Beach, and up here, Oakland, San Francisco, again. So it's like, anyways, beachfront. It's technically beachfront, but
yeah,
like, anyway. Hey, like, we should look at the chat because I don't want anyone to think that you ignore them.
yeah. Well,
No, I'm just,
I've been highlighting them. I want to make sure because I don't want to. We'll
no, I'm
discuss
just
that
saying
on.
that
I'll discuss that on
because
Monday.
there were some very specific things that I wanted to respond to. First, Eric Thurman says Journey's new singer is great. Agreed. A fellow Pinoy like myself. I'm Filipino, by the way. Pinoy means Filipino. It's a slang term. It's what we call ourselves. But then also, where was it? Eric Thurman growing up in Culver City. Yep, not far. Again, Downey. You probably know where that is. And then Random, I just wanted to highlight Random because, yeah, Random's like a baby. He's a baby
Yeah,
little
44.
44-year-old. Yeah.
I did not guess that. Um, I saw that. Yeah, 40. I was surprised when he said he was 44. He looks like he's at least 65. Um,
Are you laughing at Allison?
what?
Oh, I was wondering, are you laughing at Allison? Or no, you were laughing
No,
at
I said he looks like he's
Random.
65.
Yeah.
And here comes Fat Tread. Hello, decorating for Christmas. ATM. Do you know what ATM stands for?
At the moment.
Oh no, that's not what that's not what I say ATM means.
Oh, well, I mean, it could be a couple of different things,
I
but I
know.
assume that's what he meant in the moment.
I don't know. Hope you're only decorating with your wife, man. Anyway, so you're born in LA.
Yeah.
How many are your parents together? Did you have
Oh,
siblings?
sure. I got a brother. My parents are together. My parents immigrated here from the Philippines in 1970. Fun fact, my dad came here first and actually scoped out San Francisco because they had like a family of friends who they could stay with and kind of scoped out this place where I currently live. I live in South San Francisco, all-terrain moped. And
That's what I was
uh, um, so yeah, but then he eventually his parents moved here as well. So if you're familiar with Philippine history, and I'm not going to go into it, but we had a dictator, and he shortly after his second election put the country under martial law and declared himself, he was president for extra long. So my dad my grandfather got wind of it. My grandfather actually was in the U.S. Army during World War II, and
Oh wow.
served in the Bataan. It was in the Bataan Death March and Purple Heart, all the stuffs. And so he was able to leave the country like pretty easily, come here. Then he brought, because he could bring his sons. My father came. Him and his new wife, my mom,
Hold on.
could come.
Whi-
So yeah,
Whiskey Tango, I read the comment. I'm not gonna highlight it, but I'm sorry.
yes,
That is a Hallmark movie just waiting to happen. Anyway, sorry.
yeah. So anyway, that's the deal. So they came here. They eventually landed in LA. My dad, my mom eventually came. They had my brother, born in 1971, and I was born in 76. So my brother's 5 years older than me, and in many ways was just, he's an older brother, and so meant pretty responsible for a lot, I think, shared interests, and whether it was toys, cartoons, pop culture, like all that stuff. Like he was on the planet first, uh got indoctrinated by the animation gods and the movie gods and the toy gods, and I was born into it. I often tell people I was born into a house with a Star Wars collection, which isn't technically true, but by the time I was conscious, by the
Okay.
time I was like 3, he had become a Star Wars kid, had
Yeah.
did the whole early bird Star Wars thing. So by the time I was old enough, there were Star Wars toys in my consciousness and Star Wars sheets. And so that began the whole toy thing.
So a couple things. Were you close with your brother, or are you close? Like
Oh yeah.
growing up, because
I
5 years
mean,
is a huge difference
yeah,
when you're young.
5 years is a gap. And so the Philippine martial law dictatorship under Ferdinand Marcos, who by the way is his son is now president. Anyway, matters because once my dad was here, then it became like the mission, right, to get the rest of our family out of this place that was under martial law and a dictatorship. And so our home in Downey, California became spot number one for all these folks from the Philippines. And that's how I grew up here. My parents spoke fluent Tagalog, but just like a lot of Filipino immigrants, like in their brains, for some reason, it was just like they didn't want to retain the language. They're very much about sort of assimilating. And again, yeah, anyway, so like they thought that they had to sort of forego that. But then all my cousins were coming, they were speaking Tagalog, and that's how I learned a little bit of our language. And so when you ask about my brother and I are 5 years apart, but in between there, I had cousins that were like 1 year older than me, 2 years older than me, that ended up living with us for a while.
Okay.
So, and Filipino households, the families, like a lot of folks, folks of color in general, but like I think especially like immigrants, like we cluster families important, and every weekend was spent with family once people had their own homes and kind of moved out. So like we always had this like circle of cousins roughly around our age, and I think that helped my brother and I not get distant in the 5 years.
Okay.
Although I think as we get older, you know how things are. It's like I'm still playing with my GI Joes, and he's like hanging out with girls or whatever it is, playing music,
Yeah.
and
Like I
and
said,
then yeah,
5 years is huge when you're young.
it is.
But when you're in your 30s, 5 years is no big difference. It's not a big deal.
Yep.
But when he's 15 and you're 10,
Yep.
and especially if you're still like 10, I guess you're kind of starting to make your own friends. But 8 to 13, he's probably hanging out with. He's a teenager now, and they don't want to be seen playing with toys. But if they are one of those kids that likes playing with toys, they have a built-in excuse
My younger
to.
brother kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
One, we never shared, like it was never like, hey, I want to hang out with you all the time, and I want to hang out with you when you're with your friends. So it was never
okay.
really like that. I didn't do that. And in fact, I remember him reflecting one time and being like, yeah, dude, you always had like friends. And like he had friends, but it was never like he just remembered that of me as a kid, that like I would always have like a group of people, whatever it was. And it's kind of true, it's not. But in hindsight, like I probably I never felt the need to be like, hey, I need to hang out with you and your friends all the time.
Yeah.
So, but we still like
You weren't
we were
hanging.
friendly and
Yeah, you want to tag along where it
no.
just became a little annoyance. So you kind of mentioned some things that you had or that he had as a kid.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, did your parents kind of spoil you, or
Yeah. So like I think so it's a trip because when we talk about this and I'm like, oh yeah, I had that. And like as an adult now, and I've been aware of it for like more than 25 years. So it's not just as an adult, but I always sort of wondered like, how the did you all pay for this
I,
stuff?
man, I think the same thing because I
Yeah.
watched a lot of struggles my parents had
Yeah.
before my mom passed away because he worked for the auto industry.
Mm-hmm.
He worked at Dodge Truck, and Dodge made the worst trucks ever
Mm-hmm.
till they dropped the new Ram in '92. And but I think of all the stuff I had, and I look back and I'm like, he was laid off for years. We
Yep.
bounced around, lived with his brother. We lived, in my grandparents' house when my grandparents moved out.
Yep.
But all the stuff my sister and I had, it was like, how did you do it? Like, you know.
Did you
So I
ever
think
find an answer, or do you ever have an answer that you feel
I
like
never,
not
you know what?
comfortable with? I think I have a sense, but yeah, where did
I,
you?
I I've never really asked, but my dad grew up. There were 7 siblings.
Mm-hmm.
There's technically one passed away when he was like 1 years old. He had
Mm-hmm.
holes in his heart. So there's 7 siblings,
Oof. Uh-huh.
6 boys, 1 girl. The girl was the second youngest. Um, and they didn't have much. They lived in a 3-bedroom house. So
Uh-huh.
as you might imagine, my aunt got one room, my grandparents had the other room, and then you had 6 brothers living together.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think that he kind of looked at it and he made things work. My parents made things work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I mean, he had started to work, and I mean, he ended up retiring from Dodge Truck. So
Sure.
they did go back there, but again, Dodge Truck didn't make amazing vehicles. Now they did end up making the Dakota, so maybe that's why he did work so much for a while there. But it's definitely one of those things where you okay. It's one of those things where, yeah, I don't really ask. Um, it's like I always want to make sure my kids have things that they need. And
So no, I totally get that. I think so. One, I actually in my day job now, or my job now, career really, it's not a job because it's something I've committed to for
you know what?
decades.
I gotta
Am I
say,
jumping
like,
ahead? Yeah.
I sometimes hate saying job for what I do. I've been
Uh-huh.
there 22 years. It's a
Yeah.
career,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So I understand what you're saying, like,
Yeah.
but job is a lot easier than saying, "Oh, my career,"
Right.
because
But
then you
it's
sound like
like,
some stuck up snob.
well, the
My
reason
career.
I say that is because I don't want people. Okay, so to finish, I'm a public school teacher, so I don't want anyone to think like this public school teacher is like, yeah, and my job, that's the really stuff I really care about. Like, no, I actually do care about my job. It's important. I acknowledge that it is an important thing to do, and I see it that way. I just didn't want to be like, yeah, whatever the day gig, but really I want to be on YouTube. No, that's not it at all. But um I bring that up because I teach history and government and economics. And so like I've just always sort of been interested in understanding the world. And I have often tripped, like, how did these folks, these two immigrants from the Philippines who had to come here and establish themselves, like literally, like if I look at their story, it's fascinating. My mom was like working. I remember they were just getting whatever work they could. My mom at one point actually worked um uh it was Mattel, I want to say, but I gotta confirm. And she was doing assembly work, and that was one way that my brother got some of his early toys because they got a discount and stuff. Um, and then eventually she landed in an accounting gig in Whittier, California. And I love saying that, especially around like Motu fans, because that's Whittier, California, like not far from her office was where Skeletor landed on Earth in the movie in like Old Town Whittier.
Oh,
Anyway, nerd reference. And so, and then my dad, like eventually he did all sorts of stuff like he was waiting bussing tables. So his brother was Air Force. So they were up here in nearby here in was it Vandenberg, I want to say, like kind of between here and LA. And so my dad would like be up in the Bay, here in the Bay Area. He would work his gig there and then drive down. He set up this thing with his brother to pick up dudes from the base and drive them, and they would give him gas money and then some. So he'd hustle that way. He'd drive down to LA, paint houses. And I think he would pick up lights from the Air Force Base so that he could paint houses at night. Like basically he was hustling to be able to afford his baby that was on the way, my brother. And so I look at all that, but then I realize, and they did spend a lot of money for us. And I think a lot of it, they felt that that's how they needed to do it they were like, our kids have a different life than we are.
yeah.
This is what folks do in the United States. People buy toys, you live the life, like they wanted to give their kids maybe like a different experience of things that they couldn't have. All that said, as a teacher who like looks at history and kind of like looking at what's happening now, the cost of living and the amount of pay was very different in 1970 than it is now. They bought their home in Downey, California for less than $30,000 and ended up selling it for $500,000 in the 90s. Think about that percentage growth. And I'll share with people because I think Bay Area, like the reality here is ridiculous. But my wife and I finally were able to buy a home with some help through like these teacher assistance programs for down payment and all that kind of stuff. I tell folks this not to brag at all, but to tell you how ridiculous things are. 925 square foot home, 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, almost like $975,000. Okay, so if you look at the math, you think my parents bought 30,000 and ended up with equity after 20 some years to 500,000. I know this is not what you all tuned in for, but just think about this. Am I going to see that same kind of return on my $975,000? Right. And when they would, it's wild. Like the times have changed. And even when I talk about rent and how much stuff costs. So when we look at the real dollars for what people were paying for toys versus what chunk of that matches their budget and their expenses and stuff. Again, I'm not like, either way, it was a lot of money to spend, but I don't know. It would be the equivalent, I guess, of if I was a parent and like, I don't know, buying my kids Mythic Legions or something. Like it's like, anyway, whatever. It's just good times.
No, you're right. I mean, it was a different way of life. I know, like my grandfather was super cheap, and when my dad tells the story when he bought the house, my grandmother wanted to redo the whole house, put new furniture in, and he said, "No, you can't buy anything new till the house is paid off." He worked at Ford Truck. He worked at Chrysler, then he went on to Ford. Most of my family worked for Ford. My dad's like, he paid the house off in 7 years. Can you imagine paying your house off in 7 years?
No, Lawrence, I really can't. It's part of my nightmare. But no.
Yeah, I'm the same way. And and my dad said the moment he paid that off, your grandmother went out and bought all new furniture.
Yep.
As cheap as he was, they said my dad said when he did buy stuff, he spent good money on it. Like he didn't buy cheap stuff. He was just really cheap. They had some of you. We're in this age. Maybe some of you guys have seen houses that have the trash compactor.
I mean, I remember them. Yeah. I mean, if you've got folks who are saying 44, 47, 50, whatever. Yeah, they understand.
They had a trash compactor. They never used it. And my dad said, if you look underneath the bags, you'll see the original bags that came with it.
Yeah.
And it was there till she ripped it out. Like till she finally got rid of it after he passed away. I think he passed away then. When she finally redid the kitchen, because she's like, hey, I don't have much more time. I want, But anyway, so as you're a kid,
Yeah.
what toys did you tend to gravitate to?
Oh,
You're
shoot.
right in my age bracket.
Yeah.
So
So as I was saying, I was essentially like came into consciousness when my brain could actually have memories in a house that had Star Wars, everything, because my brother was collecting. And so that was the one thing about my parents. They were like, you're buying toys, but understand, like, you're a Star Wars kid. And I think at one point my brother was able to convince them like we needed GI Joes too. So basically it was Star Wars and GI Joes, and actually they would get upset if we even like hinted at like, hey, could I get, no, that's not Star Wars or GI Joe.
wow.
And so we had to like find ways to talk to like auntie, tita, tito, like, or grandma, like, there's this thing called Masters of the Universe. And so like occasionally we get like one-offs or a couple of random things, but like the main toys that we had were those. And um so yeah, I mean, we still had some things every now and then, and in hindsight, anyway, so I don't want to air my family's business, but I think yeah, I think there was the occasional let me buy the kid something to atone for my sins. I'll just say it like that. So but anyway, I think that yeah, it was mainly Star Wars and GI Joe. So those are the main things. And then there were some occasional like Japanese toys. I don't know why those were okay, and how we ended up getting those. I think it's kind of maybe what I sort of
Like
hinted at.
what when you
Mhm.
say Japanese toys, what
Dude, yes. Uh, I had some dope like Mospita, which became Robotech. I had
mm,
Mospita, which were the motorcycle, the Gen 3 Robotech, basically
okay.
Scott, um, before Robotech became a thing in the United States. Like
Oh
there was
wow.
this toy store in Los Angeles, in Japantown, J-Town, called Pony Toy Go Round. And we would go there not to necessarily shop, like that was like a place to go, and we'd walk around, and then we would go and we would just gawk, me and my brother, back, oh my God, check that out. And what's that? Like we had no context or anything. Like a bunch of dudes in a red suit, a yellow suit, a blue suit. Like that's cool. But we didn't really know it was Super Sentai, which would eventually become Power Rangers. But we just saw these toys and we're like, those like they look different from GI Joe,
Yeah.
or Star Wars, and we're like, wait, these can move and all this kind of stuff. Um, and so we would pick up an occasional thing, and like I'm trying to think of it, and I think if I'm remembering, I got to ask my brother about this. A lot of those random Japanese toys, I think, was rewind. My dad ended up getting into trucking. He was like a salesperson for truckloads, for
Okay.
anyone delivering anything, fast food, frozen food express, FFE. And so he was like the person on the West Coast and Arizona. And so he would have to travel up to a terminal up here in Oakland every month from LA. They had a terminal down in I forget the name of the city in LA. And then so he would bring one of us, either my brother or me. And yeah, I think there was a lot of that. Okay, we're up there, we're buying you a toy in Japantown in San Francisco. So we'd see
All
things
right.
in LA. Then we go up there and just like hang out with him during the day, like sit in some random office while he had a meeting, and then he'd come out. We'd usually have like a toy in hand. And then, hey, look, hey, let's go eat at Japantown. Let's do this. And then it was like, oh, I want that. And we'd come home with it. So yeah, I think that might have been the story behind that. I got to figure that out. But like, so we'd see stuff in LA and then go on a San Francisco trip and come home with something like that. And so, man, I had a couple of random, like I had some Insecticons from Japan. I don't know where that stuff ended up, if I could somehow find it, because we didn't really throw much out. Like my parents have their garage, and my brother has pretty much like he's like, yeah, no, I know where they are in his storage, a Star Wars and our GI Joe collection that are pretty complete up until the year, whatever year Battle Force 2000 was, I think, because that's when I kind of was like, peace, I'm kind of done now. Um, not necessarily, not necessarily because of Battle Force 2000, but I just remember that
Oh,
was the time period.
you don't have to make excuses.
No, but so it was GI Joe's, mainly GI Joe, Star Wars, and then some rando Japanese stuff. And then I remember my brother convinced my aunt when He-Man came out to buy him a He-Man one time. They had like gone out, came home with a He-Man. So of course the 5-year younger kid is like, wait, why does he get to have a He-Man? And so I got a
I love that.
Skeletor, and then I ended up getting a Castle Grayskull, which I love it because now I can like talk to my brother. And if I remember correctly, and again, all this stuff is hazy, we need to sit down and just talk about it. But it wasn't even because I was like, why am I getting a Castle Grayskull? I didn't ask for Castle Grayskull. But I think it's because he told my parents that's what I wanted, mainly because he wanted to have a Castle Grayskull in the house. So there was a lot of, that
I never
kind of
got to
stuff.
do that because I only had a sister. Like, I had
Yeah, I
a
was gonna
younger
say, so
sister.
what's your deal? I'm curious. Or your family?
I have a sister that's 6 years younger than me. That
Okay.
well, she lives a couple hours away. I really don't talk to her too much. And then I have my mom passed away when I was 13.
Okay.
I think most people know that. Um, so my mom just suddenly passed away, and they were married, but my dad worked the afternoon, so on the weekends they spent time together.
Uh-huh.
So to say I didn't really know my dad, I mean I didn't really know him. It's not like I didn't know who he was. I mean,
Sure.
when the day my mom passed away, it was the beginning of midwinter break,
Uh-huh.
and he took us to go to the skate shop so I could buy a new skateboard.
Nice.
I actually forgot my money. So he had actually, it was on his way to work. He took the money. He went and grabbed the board. He said, "Oh, we'll have it tomorrow morning." But he swung by my mom's, threw it in the back of her car, and just let her know, "Hey, tell him his, his skateboard's in the back." So it was just one of those like, that's how my morning started.
Hmm.
And it ended one of the worst days of my life.
Yeah.
Um, so like I said, I was 13, and
Mm-hmm.
I was an adult at that moment. Like I was an
Sure.
adult. I found her. I sometimes think my sister may have found her
Hmm.
because it was February and she was outside walking around. Like we lived in condos, so she was outside. I think she may have actually found her, but doesn't really remember.
Oof.
But like her and I are way different.
She would have been
6.
6, 7.
Well,
Okay.
actually, she would have been. Yeah, she would have been 6, almost 7.
Yeah, that's young.
Yeah,
And the
and so
brain
it was
does
just one
stuff.
of those. It was one of those. It's weird for a kid to sit there and say, "I'm an adult at this age,"
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
I was. That's why I don't drink or smoke or do drugs. I promised my mom I wouldn't. As a
Oh,
kid,
okay.
all kids promise their parents they wouldn't. But
Yeah.
when my mom passed away, I just felt I wouldn't. And my dad, he had enough on his plate dealing with a young daughter
Mm-hmm.
that why bother him anymore? And really, that's when I went. I was already skateboarding, obviously, but that's when I really got into it. That's all I cared about.
Yeah.
But then you find out. I mean, I was straight edge before I knew what straight edge was.
I was gonna
I was
ask, yeah, because that would have been like 88, so you weren't really aware of.
89. So
Okay,
we had. I would say we had just found like we were. Other people were introducing me to music.
got it. You were
I
skating,
specific,
but you weren't like you weren't getting into the music part of. And
no,
to
but
be
no,
clear,
because
like
even
for
that like
everyone, like music wasn't necessarily always like punk wasn't tied necessarily to
no like
skating, but yeah,
so like the opening song is
it
from
became.
the H Street video.
Hmm. Yep.
Um, so but we really didn't know what punk was. I remember being over my cousin's house and the friend that I was with, she got him because he knew what they were. I don't know how he knew. Doggy Style,
Oh
which
yeah.
took me
Hmm.
forever to find.
Hmm.
We knew about the Misfits, the Circle Jerks. That's how I found out
Hmm.
about Circle Jerks. Bad Brains, and that was all before like even Bad Religion, which is kind of shocking.
Love the Bad Brains, and yeah,
Um, and
I
so
love
that's
all the
just
bads. Sorry, you said bad. You said Bad Brains and Bad Religion. I was like, yeah, I love all the bads. Yeah.
Bad Company.
Mm. Mm. Okay. You win.
But I mean, that was really how I kind of got introduced into it, to be
Oh, okay.
honest.
Mhm.
But I really didn't know what it was. I was still listening to, what was on the radio. Um, the first, and I actually don't regret this. This isn't an embarrassment. The first tape I ever got was Run DMC Raising Hell.
Oh, why would you be embarrassed? That's
I
that's
said
a
I said I'm
badge
not
of honor.
embarrassed.
I
I
know,
said
but
I'm
I was
not
like, why would
embarrassed.
any I was gonna say, why would
Yeah,
anyone be
well,
that?
again,
That's
like
like a
it's not the genre that I'm really into,
sure,
but
sure,
again, it
sure.
was such a good album. I remember not wanting to get it because we went down to this place called Trapper's Alley. It
Uh-huh.
was with my mom's mom, and like my cousins were there, and it was right around my birthday. And I told them that I wanted it, and then I didn't want to get it, and they're like, "We knew you weren't gonna want to get it because once you saw the price of it, it was like $10 for a cassette tape." But when you're a kid, you think that's so expensive. Like that's my birthday money, you know.
Yeah.
You don't realize it's something you're gonna listen to over and over and
Yeah.
over. Um, but yeah, so yeah, my sister, she's younger. We're nothing alike, nothing alike at all. Two polar opposites. Uh, we'll just leave it at that.
Sure, sure. No, no.
And
Yeah,
then, so my dad didn't.
family's complicated.
Yeah, my dad didn't date till
Mhm.
later on, and then he, oddly enough, this lady and her husband that we went on vacation with shortly after my mom passed away. They were running buddies, and her husband just suddenly passed away. And then 3 months later, they were together.
Mm.
And so he's really the only dad her kids have ever known because they were
Mm.
3 and 4, maybe 2 and 3 when their dad passed away.
Mhm.
So I do have um, two step brothers and sisters, half Japanese, half American.
Mhm.
Uh, they don't look American. They definitely have the Japanese side. But yeah,
To be clear, you mean half Japanese, half white, I'm assuming. Yeah, right?
yes, white.
Well, I mean, I know that. I just wanted yeah.
Yeah, they're full American because
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I hate that term anyway because Canada is part of America, so is
I
Mexico,
know.
and
It's America's a continent or a two
there's
continents.
two continents. I actually hate the term America because of that. But also when
I
it
don't
sounds stupid if you
disagree.
say I'm United Statian. Like that just doesn't work.
Yeah.
If you're saying I'm American.
Yeah. I
um.
am of the US.
So okay. So as we get older, we kind of
Mhm.
most of us get away from toys. Did you get into sports or anything when you got into high
No.
school? I didn't think so.
I was forced to play baseball as a first grader, mainly because remember I was saying that like we had cousins living with us. At one point, my cousin, who was 1 year older than me in school, I think he was technically 2 years older, but 1 year in school, and his sister, who is 6 years older than me, they lived with us while their father, my uncle, was like many Filipinos, an overseas contract worker. He was working on oil rigs in Saudi Arabia, and their mom was an overseas worker in it was Germany, and so they lived with us. That was like a thing that many that was anyways.
Culture.
Yeah, that was a way that the Philippines avoided revolution was to export their workers so that folks had work. But anyway, so the two live with us, and where was I going with it? I have no idea. But you were talking about Jesus. This is my senior moment.
Toy.
Oh, toys.
Sports.
Gotcha. I
Sports.
was forced to do sports because he wanted to. And so
Okay.
the drop off and all that, he wanted to do it. So I was like, "Oh, you're playing baseball." I'm like, "What? I don't know anything about this ball of which you speak." And they're like, "Well, Gigi boy, or sorry, my your cousin is gonna do it, and it's just easier to drop you both off at that." And then, man, I hated it. And I was a chubby kid at that time, and so I joined late, the team late. So like they had only so many. I'm saying this because this is my childhood trauma with sports, and I think it explains why I didn't like sports for many years. So I joined late, and they're like, "What shirt do you wear?" Like a large. "Oh, we don't have any larges. Let's see if we have a medium left." "No, we don't have that. You're gonna have to wear a small." And so I would have to squeeze into this uncomfortable baseball uniform, tight, tight pants, stirrups, all this. Like, what is this thing that y'all are like? You got to, hit the ball. There's all this pressure of you staring, while you hit the, like, I just didn't get it. So, because it wasn't something I chose. Like, I think ultimately that's what it was. And it was forced on me and it was a negative experience. Fast forward, I think the second time I ever played like organized sports was in the 7th grade, because like literally every single boy in the 7th grade joined the team, because all the 8th grade boys hated the coach and quit. And they're like, I was like, well, I don't want to be the only one who's not. So I did it.
That's
So
awesome.
if that gives you a sense, I have a complicated relationship with sports. And then honestly, for me, the whole punk thing, like, I don't know what your experiences was like, but like a lot of us, it was like there was that very 80s thing that is very different now as a person who teaches in high schools. But it was like there was the jocks and there was not a whole lot of social mixing in that way. So I kind of just leaned into that, I guess. And I was the nerdy dude, like all of the stereotypes. I was like into art and comic books and music and all that stuff.
So when you got into high school, did you put the toys away like most kids do and find something else?
Not necessarily, and not because I was like embarrassed or ashamed of it at all. I thought it was really cool, but I did sort of feel like I didn't ask for it anymore. I didn't want them to pay for it.
You just kind of grow out of it.
Well, you know what I think what it was is at a certain point. No, I know exactly what it is now that I think about it. I After 8th grade, I was offered a job at basically like the parish. We were raised Catholic, at the parish we grew up in.
Oh boy,
And
we've already gone down some dark roads here. We're not going to go down any like
yeah, no, but I'm just gonna tell you, no, because so I'll tell you, the job was the Catholic Church. No, it doesn't get that dark, but I'll tell you anyway.
I don't know if I can handle that.
No. Yeah, man, you've gone darker than I have. I just talked about Philippine dictatorship and overseas contract workers. So no,
Yes,
I think so I was offered this job, and the way, like, I didn't say no. One, it was like, okay, money. Two, it was like there was a little bit of pressure. I just kind of like, I wasn't offered. My dad told me, hey, I just got you a job at the church. I was like, okay, I guess I'm doing it. And so all through high school, as an 8th grader, like technically the summer after graduating from 8th grade, I had this job. It was in the church rectory. That's where the priests live. Again, we're not going there. No, but and I like carried stuff there. I answered the phones. I did all of that.
Oh wow.
And then you watch, like, there was a TV there and like all this stuff, whatever. So so I was making money, and that's what it was. I think it was at a certain point they were like, well, we're not buying you stuff anymore. You've got a job. And then I think I was just like, my brother would have been freshman in college. He was still buying toys. He was starting to buy toys again, hardcore. He was like drawing comic books and worked at a comic book shop and was doing that whole thing. But I think for me, I was like, what am I going to do with my money? And then the music thing and the punk rock thing started happening. And that's when I discovered shows. In 9th grade, I went to my first all ages show in Long Beach, $5 all ages show, beautiful chaos, stage diving, slam dancing, all of that. I was like,
Now were they
oh,
were
this
they
is
legit
amazing,
bands or were they local bands?
dude. Well, I don't know what the difference would be. I'd say the local bands were legit, but no, actually my first
Well,
show.
I mean, like real, like I
Were they
mean,
like big bands, you mean? Or
not even big bands, but like known bands.
so they were, because
And that's what, yeah, that's what
yeah,
I want to find out.
but there were local bands. So there were a
But
couple
you're
of
in, but anyone
yeah,
that's tuning in, I mean, understand, like you're in
yeah,
California. That's
yes.
where I'm not gonna say punk rock originated, but for me, that's where punk is for me. There's the
Especially
East
if you're into the
Coast,
skating thing.
yeah,
Yep.
and then there's the West Coast,
Yep.
and East Coast is way different.
Yep. I'm digging through here because, like, just like last time when you and I were talking on my channel, I was looking at my zines and sort of like, and now today I was like, I brought my 7 inches to flip through. But that first show, dude, that first show
You never
was
mentioned it.
freaking No Spiritual Surrender. We did this last time and we both forgot the
Inside
name
Out.
of the band. Inside Out. Thank you. They were on tour. It was their only tour, and they were local to us, kind of. Anyway, Zach was in Orange County. This
So
is the
they
dude
would be a
that,
legit band. I mean, God, how I don't want to say they're not a legit band, but
but
they
known
weren't.
band,
What?
known band. Well, I don't know what you mean by
Inside
known.
Out wasn't known because they
Well, I
only
guess
did.
to us so it was like them. It was Mission Impossible. Who else was in that first show? So I don't know. There was a Victory band. I'm trying to
So,
remember who was Mouthpiece.
okay,
So they were like bands, I guess, in hindsight that people know about, but at the time they weren't like huge. It was literally
so
all ages, DIY.
so your first show was Inside Out.
Yeah, but like we didn't know what inside.
Okay,
So I guess to your point, we didn't know what Inside Out
okay.
meant
So
or
for
was.
explain to everyone who Inside Out is. That I was like,
So Inside Out, eventually the members of Inside Out, the lead singer was a guy named Zach De La Rocha, who was living in Orange County, grew up in Orange County. And then eventually after this band, he formed another band with a guy, Tom Morello. And oh God, I'm blanking on the other two dudes' names that became Rage Against the Machine. But yeah, and I was at one of Rage's earliest shows. And it's somewhere in this house. I need to find it, but I have a Rage Against the Machine cassette demo that I know could help me buy some more toys. But
Rage Against the Machine was supposed to be, I think, their next song that they were going to do for Inside Out before they ended.
oh, you mean the title?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Yes.
So, Rage Against the Machine was supposed to be the title of like their next song they were going to do. But when they split up or however it ended, they decided to name the band that.
Yes. Yeah, totally, 100%. Sorry, I'm looking. Okay, so we're all over the place, but that's okay. That's how the world is.
But the
This-
fact that you're in 9th grade and you're hitting
Hell yes.
shows like this.
Hell yeah, dude. I was just checking out all sorts of cool bands. I was trying to find my Downcast. So Downcast 7-inch. There's this band on Abolition Records. Somebody in the chat mentioned Goleta, California. It was a in DIY as it gets. Record label.
Do it yourself. DIY.
Yeah, do it yourself. Sorry, thank you. Which to me was what punk rock was about. Yes, it was about the music, but for me, it was everything around like we do it ourselves, which full circle, doing a YouTube channel in my mind is very much like DIY TV or whatever you want to call it. So, Abolition Records, this dude was doing a zine called No Answers, Kent McClard. And he would write these like diatribes that were like inspiring for young people. Like, yeah, right on. Super smart guy. I think he was in UC Santa Barbara at the time, which is where I eventually went to school. But he wrote this thing, and in it was something about Rage Against the Machine.
Okay.
Zach De La Rocha, while in Inside Out, contacts him and he's like, yo, I love that line. Can I use that as the name of a song? Okay. And then eventually it's like, I'm going to use it for my band. So anyway, that his original band, they didn't go very far. They released one 7-inch, but also for the other punk nerds, it also had a dude, guy, I can't remember his name now, but he was Vic. Do you remember Vic? Did you pay attention to those guys at all? The other dude in the band became one of the Hare Krishna dudes and was in a band called 108. Did you do the whole straight edge yoga things? Yeah.
The only thing I know about 108 is that.
Sorry, did I just say straight edge yoga? That's so bad. I meant straight edge Krishna. Yeah. That's hilarious though.
So the only thing I know about 108 is that Choke from Slapshot absolutely hates them.
Sure. I mean, yeah.
And that's the only reason why I know who. I mean, this is the only reason why I know who 108 is because if you ever listen to Slapshot, there was a time that he was probably the most aggressive, hardcore guy going, and he had no problem calling people out. And that was one of the bands that he went after.
Yeah.
But I was just like, he's gonna say 108, but I know nothing about them.
Okay.
I'm not going to try and put them down or anything like that because I really don't know anything about them. I will say this: I'm not a Rage Against the Machine fan. at
Yeah,
all.
we talked about it. It was a
But
sick of
I
it all
love
thing, right?
Inside Out. I love Inside Out. Like
Yeah, yeah.
those 5 songs, right? It's 5 songs, or was it 6? I think it's 5. They're just so good. They're so heavy. Just I love it, man. I love that. And again, it gives me that they don't sound like Operation Ivy, but it's just that Operation vibe of how um just how raw it was. And they
Mm.
really didn't know what they were doing, but I think that they really inspired a lot of people, especially a lot of the California hardcore over there.
Oh, totally.
Not so much New York.
And then Ray's asking, he loves Rage. Is Rage punk music though? I considered it rock though at the time. At the same time, admittedly, I don't know much about music. No, like, so just like, I gotta say, like, when it, like, we're all old people now. Like, let's be real. And so
Yes, we are.
talking about toys and talking about music or whatever, we got to recognize that sometimes it's real silly. And we do this thing of like, it's this box and it's this box. And in hindsight, we were kids. I was what, a 13 or 14-year-old kid going to shows. And it was like, oh, I'm straight edge. I'm this, and I declare this, and I'm into these kinds of bands and this label. It was very much like that, which I think also has a lot to do with just 80s kids, right? Like, I
I
like
agree.
G.I. Joes. I like Masters of the Universe. Like, we had very much this, like, you'd crowd around a thing and it became your thing. And I just find that, like, now with the internet, you can like listen to whatever music you want at any moment or learn
It is.
about anything. So it's all spread out. Like,
There's so
culture
much
is,
more acceptance with a
yeah,
lot of these bands that you
yep,
hear,
yep.
especially because you realize, again, I'm not a musician,
Mhm.
but just because you play punk music, which isn't the hardest musically to play, doesn't mean that the guys playing it aren't good musicians.
No.
They just like a specific style. I
Yeah.
watch, you look at all the band members from Rancid. They are amazing.
Yeah.
Strung Out, they are amazing. These guys are, I mean, some of them are extremely good, especially the drummers. All I hear about the drummers is just how good they really are because they have to play so fast. Uh, but it is that really weird that really weird thing. And I got Gigi Allen is I don't think he's anything. He was sick and crazy. That's what he was.
Well, on
Um,
that note, to go back to the rage thing. So where I was going with that is like they definitely had like punk roots, but no, I don't think rage like identified with the punk scene or anything. If anything, it was like one of these many quote unquote post punk bands, which were basically like folks who were in the punk scene and kind of did another thing. Like I think of like Quicksand and Rage Against the Machine and you're not a Quicksand fan.
no, 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 not at all.
But yeah, and it was also just the time period. Like that's the mid 90s when the whole like the year the punk broke thing, right? When Lollapalooza becomes a thing, alternative rock becomes a
Yeah.
thing,
So
and so they were just hunting for the record labels were hunting for the next big things, and a lot of these folks,
and
including punk bands, got record deals.
yeah, but
And
but for the most part, it was that grunge coming in, and I think
Mhm.
most people that had been putting in the kids that have been paying their dues in real fucking pits,
Mhm.
getting knocked around. I think most of us really hated the whole grunge movement because they just came in and everyone was like, "This is punk," and you're like, "Dude, that is not punk at all. There's nothing punk about Nirvana. Absolutely nothing punk." All right. Soundgarden is now a lot of them have punk influences,
Well, and
but
a lot of them were in punk scene. I mean, they
oh
were,
yeah, but the band,
especially Nirvana,
the,
more so than Soundgarden,
the
at
music was
least
not
up in
punk
Olympia.
though.
Okay, so well, this is maybe where we differ, and this is a great conversation. But like, is punk a sound, or like that's where I was saying earlier? For me, it was like the DIY thing, and I'm kind of that school of thought where like and so, for example, like these again, no offense, I'm not saying that I don't like these bands, but like the Warped Tour bands that have formed well into like the late 90s or 2000s that started as bands that got record labels deals and were huge. Are they punk because they sound it? Like, and in
Well, I
my
think
brain, yeah.
so. Okay, so this is something that I've always said. If you have like, if you put something in front of it, that's what it really is. So pop punk is really pop.
Mm. Mm.
Makes sense.
Took me a while for it to
So
connect.
so
But
hard. So think.
okay.
So hard. So
But
people say
hold on a
hardcore
second.
music.
Hold on a second, though. People would put say face to face in the pop punk thing,
They're
but like
not.
I remember face to
They're,
face, like
they're
they
not.
were grinding, just like anybody else, and they were playing with new age record bands at $5 show, all ages, but they get lumped in sometimes with that or
Oh, I know
game
they do, but
face
I don't
or
consider them pop to punk. But it's like
I
people
see.
consider hardcore punk, right? But it's
Uh-huh.
hardcore punk. I don't consider. I mean, it's part of the punk genre, but hardcore is its own
Sure.
sound. It's not
Sure.
metal. You know,
Yeah.
you get the metal. People are like, oh yeah, I like that hardcore stuff. The metalcore. Oh, you like metal, is what you're saying.
Well, let me ask you. So
That's what I
Ray
become
Ray,
a snob.
Ray brings up a point. Yeah, that's the thing. But I'm curious, do you at all like Nirvana the music? Like when you listen to
I
it, is it at
fucking
all
hate everything
enjoyable?
about Nirvana.
Really? Okay. Okay.
I hate his fucking sound. The only thing I like about fucking Nirvana, there's two things. The SOD song that they did making fun of them,
Uh-huh.
and when Weird Al makes fun of them and does parodies. Here's a story about Nirvana. It's not really about Nirvana. So if you remember that first Lollapalooza, everyone hung out, stayed out overnight to buy tickets. We went and hung out. I didn't want to go see Nirvana, or I didn't want to go see Lollapalooza. I hated those bands. I
Mhm.
still hate those bands. But we went to hang out. Now, mind you, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning,
Uh-huh.
these people are drunk. I'm not drunk. Well, we had a.
Yeah, this is the
I'm
straight
sorry.
edge revenge story. Is that what this is? Go for it.
No, not. I had a Will Riker cardboard stand up,
Okay.
and we took. I want to say was it Time magazine that had Kurt Cobain's head on the cover, and we plastered it over it, like we taped it over it. And then at like 4 o'clock in the morning, when these people are like they're trying to crash because they can't hang out. We set it up in the middle of the street, and I ran it over. And like there's two people in the car with me, and then I backed over it. Now all these people are flipping out about it, that they couldn't believe I would do it. And my buddy in the back is completely drunk, and he thought it was the fucking most hilarious thing ever. Because
You think people were like they
they were
were
pissed.
so drunk they thought it was a person, or they were just
Oh
so
no, they were pissed because
offended
it had
that it
Kurt
was so
Cobain's face
sacred?
on it. They were
Yeah, well,
so
they deserved it. If they were upset about that,
they
they
were
deserved
so
it.
pissed. And I'm trying to think, was that after he killed himself or not?
Oh, okay. Well,
I don't.
Lawrence.
Did he kill himself before?
It was in 1990. I would have been in
I
I
think
think
it
it was
was
like nine.
before. It was before because I made the comment after
It
it
had to
happened.
have
I'm
been
like,
before because
yeah,
they did play at
because
Lollapalooza.
when I heard, I said, "What do you mean? I already killed him?" Listen, I've said a lot of non-politically correct things in my
Well, I
life.
don't think that's politically correct. I just think because there's nothing to do with politics. But dude committed suicide, and
Or his wife killed him, one or the other.
oh no, there's a
That's
third
what
one.
I
No,
truly
I'm just kidding. Oh, Courtney.
And did you know
Anyway,
that his daughter just married Tony Hawk's son?
I did not know that.
I would not have known that either, other than it popped up on uh, the app that I listen to sports radio station,
Mm-hmm.
and I saw Riley Hawk, who I know not only because he's Tony Hawk's son, but because he's a pro skateboarder too.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know, and it just says like Tony Hawk's son marries Nirvana, Kurt Cobain's daughter. I would not have known who she was, but I knew who Riley Hawk was.
Sure.
Skateboarding.
Well, I think so. I was open to grunge, and I dug it. I was also like making music at the time, and I was also,
And I think
um,
that's really different. When you hear musicians, they hear
mhm.
things differently.
Mm,
I just hear music that I like. I don't understand. I don't understand how to make music. So I someone can tell me that Van Halen is an amazing guitarist, which, but I don't know. I mean, I can hear it and say that it
sure,
sounds good, but I don't know how good he really is, right?
sure,
I
sure.
just know that "Jump" is a really corny song. Um, yeah, I just don't think they make really good music.
Yeah,
My
well,
It's my personal opinion.
yeah, for some of them folks who were like saying like grunge was awful, all that stuff. I just want to like I understand what you're saying, but to be clear, like to those folks making music, and I fully understand this as a musician, there was no such thing as grunge. That was like a record label construction to be able to market a thing that then unfortunately like became a thing in magazines like, oh, here's the grunge look and all this. And to
But
them
isn't
it
that
was
how
like,
everything's gonna start?
well, no, it is, but I'm just saying, like, when you say grunge, that's the thing that was always weird to me. Even with punk, like people reduce punk to like, oh, it's 3 chords and like rage. And it's like,
Three
well,
chords and a half truth, as
but
Face to
it's
Face did the album.
yeah, but like if you ever listen to whatever Black Flag and then you listen to whatever 7 Seconds, Minor Threat, sure there's some similarities, but they're not the same thing. Agent Orange, like there's social
Oh, yeah.
distortion. And that's the thing. It's like when we say it eventually becomes a thing and people replicate a sound, but like that's why I always sort of adhered to like, dude, it's less about the sound that you're doing, and it was more about like the whole ethos, the do it
Punk.
yourself, anti-corporate, all that kind of stuff. Like that was what was
Okay,
punk to us.
so when you look at punk, there's two different things. There's like the movement that was punk rock,
Mm-hmm.
but then there's the music. It's like metal, right? There's different sounds of metal.
Sure.
Anthrax does not sound like Slayer, but they're both, um,
Perfect example.
you know,
Yeah, people think metal and they go to them, it's all one thing. It's like it's
people
actually
think
not.
Metallica is metal, and you go, "Have you heard the Black Album? It's a ballad." Um,
Well, everyone, yeah. Anyways, yes, that's the thing. I mean, yeah. Anyway, I think I was gonna tie it to toys because, uh, yeah, I've always I consider myself punk and I did that thing, but I was like I also listened to a lot of quote unquote rap and a lot of hip hop, and like very much like felt a part of that and embrace that culture too. And like I've always kind of wanted to write this thesis of like, dude, they're the same thing in many ways, both in terms of like the purpose, a lot of the ethos, the time period, right? You get the Clash, who was like doing a lot of like early stuff with DJs and it's like uh the folks in DC, um Fugazi and them, like, Minor Threat, really like they do punk shows and they'd be listening to reggae and then hip hop. And so anyway, like I was always kind of about it. Like I knew what I was into and I would define stuff and be like, punk rock, DIY, do it yourself, generally like anti-corporate. It's not about the profit. It's like all this stuff, right? And that was the thing at the time.
yeah,
Um, and now in many ways, like it's influenced my life. But I say that because like I wasn't like, oh, I don't like grunge. Of what is this? Like I was never that person who was like, yeah, that stuff sucks. It just wasn't my thing. Or and I was kind of open to a bunch of stuff, which I think has totally informed just the way I moved through the world. And same with like toys. Like people are like, dude, what are you talking about? Like Mythic Legions probably isn't the best example, but like, what's this weird Blade Master Wang thing that you're into? Does Hasbro make that? And I was like, no, it's just this random like thing coming out of this third party. And they're like, what is that? And some people, not everybody, but some people just don't get it because they're like, that is that a thing? Like, I don't get that. I don't have a nostalgia for that or whatever. And so I'm not dissing that, but it's just, I've never been sort of the person that had like, this is the way that this is the lane that I'm supposed to sit in. This is the music I'm supposed to listen to. These are the toys I'm supposed to like. It was just kind of like, oh, what's that about?
and you know
What's
what?
that about?
And I think most people are like you.
Mm.
I was not,
Mm.
and I'm not afraid to admit it. But
No,
again,
and yeah,
I've also told people, like, I don't think that I've changed since I was a kid, but I believe I've evolved. Like,
yeah.
the people that have changed, like one day they're straight edge, and then next thing you know, they have I love pot, and you're like, all right, dude, like
Then
you're
you
just
never
gonna
were
follow
straight.
the trends. You're gonna
Yeah.
follow the trends or whatever the cool people are doing.
Well, yeah.
And I mean, I've told people that didn't like me in high school I'm like, listen, because they'll be like, wow, you've changed a lot since high school. I'm like, listen, if you think that I'm the same person that I was when I was 17, 18, I hope not. Now, I believe my core values are still the same,
Mhm.
but I believe that I've evolved.
Mhm.
Obviously, I mean, as most people that have watched my stream for a year know that I'm very vocal about things. And I will
Mhm.
tell you, I think something sucks. Um, and I've had people, I'll tell people their music sucks, or I tell people soccer sucks. And they go, well, what if I say skateboarding sucks? I'll say, good, I don't care. Doesn't just because I'm telling you that it sucks, I want you to kick back and go, you know what? Fuck you. I love it. It makes me happy. Because if you tell me skateboarding sucks, I'm gonna say, okay, I love it. It's the greatest thing ever. What if I say your music sucks? I go, okay, good. You don't have to listen to it. Same as if I, but that's just me. Like I'm
Yeah.
very in your face. I've calmed down a little bit in my old age.
Yeah. I mean, there's a million ways to be, right? There's no way to be human, whatever. And I've seen like I've hang out with folks who are very much like that, like aggressive or just like seemingly confrontational. But it's like I'm not confronting you to hate. Like this is just the way I am, and
Yeah,
deal with it. And so I totally get that. I yeah, I just think that the whole like boxes, the notion that this is that, even that concept is always I've struggled with. I try to understand it on a certain level, like with the punk thing in my brain, it became, well, the DIY thing and engaged in scene stuff and like building stuff versus say somebody who is like, I have a sound and they might be the most punk sounding thing, but like my outlook is to get A&M Records to sign me so that I can do like that's just it's not bad. I'm not going to judge it, but like that's just different than
yeah.
this. But anyway, I'm looking at like the people's comments and stuff, and real quick, love Zeppelin, love hip hop, like
No, see,
um no offense, not feeling Ugly Kid Joe, but yeah.
so that's the one I kept looking at. So, like, yeah, I love 80s music.
Uh-huh.
I love 60s music.
Yep.
There's a lot of metal that I like. I
Mm-hmm.
like early rap. I will not call it hip hop.
Mm-hmm.
It is rap. End of story. Like NWA,
What's
Public
that on?
Enemy.
What's that based on? I'm just curious. How do you define? Again, not challenging, just want to understand.
What?
Not hip hop. Yeah.
Because I always thought of hip hop as just the radio play stuff.
That's interesting because it's
Yeah,
actually kind of the word rap is what the genre was defined by the record companies. Hip hop was the culture that was like coming out of the late 70s and 80s in New York City, Bronx boogie down, and it was like the elements of hip hop, what rapping, which is one part, but then it's
but
got the DJing, the breaking, and the graffiti or
but
the
do you
writing.
consider like
So
NWA, Public Enemy? Uh,
hip hop,
See, I consider it rap.
but they are rappers that well, but
Yeah. No,
again,
I mean,
whatever.
but
But
that's just how
but just
like
understanding that's how the culture was defined, and
yeah.
yeah, the West Coast
It,
thing, that they did their thing, but
and I will 100% admit I would not be the authority on rap or hip hop, but I always
sure,
saw hip hop as
sure,
what
sure,
was
sure.
being played on the radio.
I'll give you an
Um,
analogy. I think the way you sort of said that, and I appreciate that you're like, yeah, I'm not at all the authority, but it would probably rub you the wrong way if someone was like, yeah, I'm really into Nirvana, I love punk, and so and
no,
that's what it. Yeah.
if someone was calling like, "Oh, dude, I love new wave," like Pennywise, Bad Religion, Rancid, I'd
Uh-huh.
probably punch you. It ain't fucking new wave. But people saw new wave, Jesus Jones. Gotta hated Jesus
Oh,
Jones.
see, this is fascinating. That's what you're calling new wave?
Oh, Jesus Jones. What was the other one that came out at the same time Jesus Jones did?
See, in my brain, that was like British, like shoegaze or pop, but like new
No,
wave was like
if you're talking about the 80s
Talking
new wave,
Heads. Sure.
that's different. But
Okay.
then you have what to me they always wanted to be punk. Like Dinosaur Jr. is not
Mhm.
punk. I'm not a
Was
Dinosaur
Jesus?
Jr. fan,
I wasn't.
but I
I just
don't
never
dislike them
followed them.
either.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
Jesus Jones, God, there was one other one that came
Did
out.
Jesus Jones have
EMF.
two bass players?
I don't know.
Okay.
I just
Anyways.
remember Jesus Jones and EMF, and they both made awful music. And every single alternative kid thought they were the greatest and like this is like awesome punk, and we're like, that ain't fucking punk, dude.
Nah, that was
I'm
just this awkward time in the 90s. Like I said, all of that came out of the year punk broke. I always use that because of the documentary. But like the notion where these record labels were looking for the next big thing because they were like, wow, we totally missed this whole Nirvana thing. There must be more music like it. And they just went after anything that they eventually determined was alternative. And that included
yes.
like, well, there's this stuff in the Manchester scene, in England, in London, I guess in Manchester. And like, yeah, that's alternative too. And they were just like, whatever we can sell to the masses. And yeah, EMF and Jesus Jones sort of came out of like that sweep of stuff. I just remember one of them, and it might have been EMF. You remember like back in the day, they have talk shows, kids, and I don't know if it was on Arsenio Hall or what talk show it was, but EMF played. And oh no, I think it was a British thing because it was very British to make you want to it wasn't Arsenio Hall because you played live there. It was some British show where they made you lip sync. And EMF was like, the dude was like, well, you're gonna make me lip sync? We can play. So dude played the bass with boxing gloves on. And we're just like, this is ridiculous. Like, I'm not gonna pretend. I'm gonna be here with boxing gloves and like I'm not even playing. What is this joke? Anyway.
So this right here, punk has no beat, is completely wrong on so many levels. Would you not agree?
So I would say if the person Machine Man is saying like, yeah, that stuff is very punk, like I would say it's
there is punk without beats. I will give you that.
Yeah. But I would just say that like definitely the techno scene, and a lot of the stuff that was happening garage, like just the Plur, the rave stuff in England, like it was very punk inspired, and a lot of them were punks because like literally they were taking over warehouses and throwing DIY parties, and of course there was all the drugs and stuff. So in many ways it was sort of had maybe punk rock influences of just like the thing, we're doing our own thing, we're creating it. So I get that folks, I see the connection. Now, would I say it's punk rock? I don't think they would say it's punk rock. Would I say it's punk? Well, I kind of get that.
But again, I think there's a difference.
Tony gets it. Plur.
I think there's a difference between punk
Peace,
rock
love.
and punk. You know what I mean?
No,
like punk rock is a sound. Punk is something that.
Man, I love it. I'm having a conversation I had when I was like 16, but that's cool.
But like, punk is also an attitude.
Yeah, totally.
Right? But punk rock is an actual music. You just kind of drop the rock when you're referring to punk, right?
Sure.
I don't have to say heavy metal rock. We know it's rock music. Same with punk rock. And the music is different. And again, going back to what Machine Man said, I'm not saying that there isn't some punk that doesn't have a beat. They can't play instruments, but you listen to Strung Out, you're going to tell me they don't have a beat. You know, you're going to tell me that Bad Religion and Pennywise don't have a proper beat, and Rancid. Totally. I mean, they. And again, if anyone watched when I was on Largo's Lair, they went through some of the lyrics, but when they pulled up the Strung Out lyrics, I'm like, this is what, when people say all punk is screaming, you need to read some of these lyrics. Because most of the bands are really, really, their songs normally have a point. Much more than Wet Ass Pussy, all right? Which I mentioned that before. Like, that's what people seem to love.
Yeah, how did you land on the WAP thing? Like, how did that get stuck in your head as a constant reference?
Because, like, when I didn't even know what that song was. And when I was told about it and I heard it, I'm like, so this is the type of shit that's on the radio that people listen to. And I, for years, have had to hear people say that all punk rock is yelling and screaming. And it's like, you should listen to the lyrics because it's about society. It's about government. It's about family. It's about friendship and camaraderie. Not all of them. NoFX doesn't sing every song like that. Guttermouth, again, just listen to the name. Probably the most politically incorrect band ever, but amazing. Their sound changes whenever anywhere you go. Every song is different on Guttermouth.
Mhm.
But they all have, not all, most of them have a point.
Well, I'll go
And
back to what I was telling you about punk, rap, what you call rap or hip hop, and how I was kind of saying they're very similar, and that's why I gravitated to both of them. Just like you said, if you actually took the time to look at a lot of the lyrics, not everyone, like you said, but like there was stuff in there that was just like
that's why I like Public
illuminating.
Enemy.
Yeah, but and Public Enemy being like one really clear, strong example because they were all about it, right? It
Yeah.
was just like, but even like uh broken trash everywhere, people living on the street, like they just don't care. I was like looking at, I was a kid in Downey, California, going like, oh crap, that's a trip. Is that what like life was like in New York for you? Right. And I'm just like there was a lot of that stuff and just a lot of the smartest folks. And then there's this stuff, like for real. But
I
that's
knew other songs from that one
I did
album.
too, right? Like, oh God, now I'm bummed that I can't remember. I'm gonna get there. I'm just stuck on the sample and the sitting at home with my, yeah, no, that's right. Okay. But still, it was like, I would argue there's like a punk element even to that, despite the whatever misogyny or however you want to frame it. That's how I choose to frame it.
I would
But
agree.
but just the notion that they were like, we can do whatever we want. We can say whatever we want. What you're gonna do about it? And I would say the same thing for WAP. It's just like, I get that like everybody feels a sense of like, screw propriety, screw what you think is acceptable. I'm gonna just say what I'm gonna say. And I know that at a certain point that becomes maybe cliche or even commodified, right? And becomes just like, we're just doing a cool thing because we know that if I say bad words, you'll buy my records. So I get that, and that happens everywhere. But I don't know. I think the punk thing, when you were talking about punk and how like you can read these lyrics and they're saying stuff, man, to me that's a lot of like hip hop. And I was the same way. Like back in the day, all of these like if you go to these, a lot of my 7 inches, you can tell which ones I loved because you can open them up and I'm pouring through the lyrics and the
I'm not,
writing and stuff.
yeah, I'm not saying like no other genre has lyrics that make sense or that
Yep.
mean something. You
Yep.
listen to a lot of that early New York rap and stuff like that. It is very, KRS-One. I mean, he sings a song with "Sick of It All." You
Mm-hmm.
know, he overdid something, and then years later, when they redid the track, he said, "Yeah, I'll come and do it one way if you let me freestyle."
Mm-hmm.
So he redoes his little part,
Mm-hmm.
and then he does the same song, but he does his own. And Lou from Sick of It All was like, "Hell yeah, I'm gonna let you. Like, you can do whatever the fuck you want."
Yep.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it's the only genre that's like that, but you don't really get that too much with metal. Metal is
Yep.
usually, half the time I don't know what the hell metal's talking about. Not gonna lie, I don't know.
No, but man, come on. Peace sells. Who's buying? Like, there's like all sorts of Metallica was like, oh yeah, no, that's some deep stuff that y'all were working through. By the way, James Hetfield, Downey, California, went to high school down from where I grew up. Like, there was a lot of like just interesting musical
Oh
history.
yeah,
Karen
you
Carpenter,
get
one of the best drummers in the world,
you
Downey,
guys get a lot
California.
of there's a lot of people that come out of California, New York, Chicago.
Karate Kid. Did you ever watch Karate Kid? Remember when they go to he takes Allie or he goes to that golf and stuff?
Yes.
Downey, California. Here's my favorite. I've tried to get you to watch this show on a third. I've mentioned it before. Did you ever watch a movie called Suburbia?
I
It
have
was like one
not,
of
but I
these sort
know
of
it.
like punk exploitation kind of movies.
Yeah.
But I say that, and that's messed up because it actually was I forget who the filmmaker. It was the same filmmaker who did what was that metal documentary back? She also went on to do Wayne's World. Penelope Spheris, is that her name?
I'm
But
not
she
sure.
did Decline of Western Civilization. She did,
Yeah.
but so I believe, I'm pretty sure Suburbia was one of the first films. Flea, while he was in Fear, was in the movie. A lot of it was filmed in where I grew up in Downey, California, and it
Okay.
was about like this group of kids who like they're called TR, the rejected punk kids, and they live in a punk house because they get kicked out and all this kind of stuff. Anyways, drama ensues. But how did we get on that? Punk rock. Oh, I don't know. So going down.
I don't know how we got here at all.
Complex mix of atoms. No. Anyway, I love the chat. Ray has a good point. If I could bring this up, and real quick, respect the God. Tony Figs has the God's name in his mouth. Rock him. And if just real quick, if you don't understand what I'm saying by God, don't worry about it. But yeah, nations of gods on earth. Rakim, yes, Eric B. and Rakim. Anyways, one of the greatest MCs. But to go up, there was something about WAP, and he makes a point that like it's women flipping the script. Like dudes could talk for the longest time about, hey, suck me so horny and all that kind of stuff, and then you get a woman who's like, WAP, all right, and it was just like,
but okay,
that's audacious.
I'm
and
gonna
like,
be 100%
that's
honest.
Kind of dope. Yeah.
If I heard me so horny and like 2 Live Crew now, and my kids hearing this stuff, I would feel the same way that I feel about that. But I felt like that about a lot of the music that's played. I think it's awful.
Yeah.
That's the decline of Western civilization.
No, man. So, okay, fair enough. But again, the context is I teach history, but like, you know what history has shown is that there were several points in time. There were people in like the 1800s looking at like what young people were doing at that time and going like, oh my God, the world's falling apart because they're into this weird stuff. Or like in the 20s and 30s, they're like, oh my God, what is this jazz thing? It's like, this is going to destroy civilization. And then rock and roll or blues or whatever. Like that's objectively true. You can see that there was a lot of press, especially as the press developed. It was always kind of like the fear of punk rock. It was the same thing, right? That was the panic. Like, oh no, who are these people? We're wearing these crazy clothes. Society is going to decline. And then it was like rave culture. Who are these kids doing drug? Oh no, society is going to fall apart. Like whatever it was. And just so, I don't know, as a high school teacher, I don't like a lot of the stuff my kids listen to. And I'll often be like, dude, that's messed up or whatever it is. But like, I get it. Cause I remember when I was young and I was trying to figure stuff out, and, you know, music, at least for me, was huge. It's less of a deal now for young people, but no, I get it. I love them, like WAP, or what was, there's that Aquafina. She had a song for it's more of a joke, okay, but my vag.
So I have not, I have not listened to any type of radio station since 93, 94, with new music. I don't know new music other than my kids, my ex, when she would listen to stuff. So this here, Cardi B. I'm at Meijer, which is like a Target and shit.
Yep.
I see this girl. She was, I think, grandmother. I'm like, what is that shirt? Oh, this is Cardi B. And I'm like, I go, what is it? Oh, it's Cardi B. She's an artist. And I go, what's that shirt though? Well, that's her logo. And I go, what? Yeah, that's her logo.
Circle Jerks.
I mean, she didn't even copy. I mean, she didn't even do an homage to it. She fucking blatantly copied the fucking Skank Man. I guarantee you Cardi B doesn't know who the fuck he is.
I guarantee you that Cardi B didn't do nothing. It was whatever graphic designer that her label hired that did the thing. And I bet you that well, I don't know for sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if that graphic designer, for all we know, was like,
I want to address this.
I know, I keep seeing it.
Yeah, like this, we don't really talk about that, but I am doing a panel tomorrow with Bees Battleground, Dreadnought Ryan, and Aaron the Toy Enhancer, and I'll go over it. I liked everything just to make it easy, but yeah, that's not something we talk about here.
And I won't be on that panel, but I liked everything too. And unlike Lawrence, I'm excited about Nemesis. Enforcer/Immortal, because I know Lawrence is not a fan of Cobra. La, 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 la,
It's like WAP is what it is.
la.
And I
And
can't
so
say that because when I hear WAP, that is not what I think of. I'm just gonna say it.
yeah. I was gonna say we were talking earlier, and so you've got
I got
you got
25%
some
of
Italian
me in
blood
it.
in you, right?
Yeah, I'm allowed to say it. 25% of me. I can say like just over one letter of it.
I want to recognize the name check of Black Star with Mos Def. Amen.
Where?
JLS Comics. Sorry, that's one of my favorite hip hop acts. This was like late 90s, 98 or so, 97 when that record came out. Black Star, by the way, I've been on this thing with Thanos Copter where we're like, whenever we're in toy circles on live streams, we're just going to keep saying Black Star in the hopes that someone will actually start making Black Star toys. So if you've ever wondered, or like, why is Thanos talking about Black Star in my live chat, or why is Brick? It's just because that's what we're doing. But Black Star is actually a music group. Mos Def and Talib Kweli. Mos Def has a new name. It's blanking me. But
I like Grunge
great
Enforcer
stuff.
here.
What is it? Grunge Enforcer?
Yeah, the Grunge Enforcer rather than Nemesis Enforcer. Actually, it's Nemesis.
Was there a G.I. Joe code name Grunge?
I don't think so.
I feel
God,
like
I
there
hope
should
not.
have been.
It would have been
There's
in the 90s,
Grunt.
that's for sure. Um, but anyway, so when you were in high school, you obviously got into music. Sounds like mostly the punk scene. Did you start playing music right away? We really got off track.
Fine. Yeah, I have been playing music since I was a kid. So my mom actually plays piano, and she was so she made probably helped to pay for some of our toys. She would teach kids after she did her full-time gig as being an accountant. She would teach kids in the neighborhood piano. And so she grew up playing piano. It's a very Filipino thing. It's a very colonial thing, Spanish thing. But you play piano because there's a certain prestige of playing piano. Anyways, my brother and I, of course, like we would eventually have to play. My brother was playing first, and then when it came to me, for whatever reason, I don't even remember why. I don't know. My parents were just like, he's the youngest one. We're just gonna throw crap at him and see how it works. We'll make him play baseball. We'll give him this job, whatever it is. But it was like, what about accordion? It's not piano. You want to try accordion? So my very first instrument was actually the accordion, dude. I did for like a year lessons. And that stuff was fascinating because that is a weird instrument. But cool. But then I don't know. I don't know why we ended up. I think that the lessons maybe got too expensive. It got easier for me to just go to the same place that my brother was. Again, easy drop off childcare, right? We'll drop them off. You'll sit while your brother does his lesson. Then you'll do your lesson. Then we'll come back and pick you guys up. And so I eventually moved to piano after about a year. And so I'd been learning, like, I hated it. It was like, classical music, like whatever,
Yeah.
but it was just a thing that we were supposed to do. I was never given a choice. It was just like, this is what you're going to do. And so I did it. And eventually I was like, this is cool. Like, music is cool. It's just like any other thing. There's it's a language, right? It's a way of thinking. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, but didn't think too much of it until I started getting old enough to pay attention to music and like certain things. And a lot of that actually has to do with toys and cartoons, right? Or whatever, right?
Okay.
The theme from Buck Rogers. And I was like, man, I'm really into this. And I would like play that stuff on the piano just because, like, oh, the Transformers one's especially good. That point in the music where it goes, this is what you were saying earlier. Musicians hear things differently.
Yes. Oh, I believe it.
But man, that shift in the music when it goes to Autobots wage their battle to and that pause, the Decepticons. I was like, yeah.
So
Anyway, so music has been a thing. What were you gonna say?
So I just want to say, so I really realize how musicians hear things. Do you know who Only Crime is?
No, Only Crime.
Do you know who Good Riddance is?
Yeah. Oh,
So,
dude, are you a Good Riddance fan?
I like them. It's not like I've never seen them, but I like them.
Oh, okay.
Only
Sorry,
crime.
Sean Sellers was the first drummer I ever played with. He was in my high school band.
Okay, so only crime is
Mhm,
is the singer's other band.
mhm.
To me, I think they sound very similar. My buddy Matt, who's a
Oh,
guitarist, he
yeah.
sang for Dire Life's Sake.
Yep.
He's like, I was like, they sound the same to me, and he's like, oh no, you can hear so and so's guitar, and I'm like, what? Oh, they sound the same. He's like, no. I'm like, to me, they sound the same. I can tell the difference because there's a slight difference, but that's when I found that out. So I understand, and I equate it to like skateboarding. People will watch a skateboarding trick and be like, "Oh my god, that looks that oh my god, how'd they do that?" I
Mhm,
look at it and go, "Oh my god, that was the ugliest thing." I don't care how hard it was; it looked so ugly. It was sketchy. Everything about it was wrong.
mhm.
And people look at it and go, "How can you say that? You can't do that." Well, it doesn't matter if I
Yep,
can do it or not. I can
yep.
break it down and tell you like how he
Yeah,
landed, where his feet were,
yeah.
why it looked
Mhm,
sketchy,
mhm.
because I look at things so differently
Toy
when it comes to
designers look
skateboarding.
at toys very differently than people who just play with toys or collect
Yes.
with also totally, like, when you're into a thing, you break it down in your head in a very different way, you come to understand it. Um, but yeah, sorry, good riddance, thank you for bringing that up, because
Yeah, so
that's
if you like Good Riddance, check out Only Crime.
I looked it up to see if Sean was playing with him, but no. But Sean
I think
Sellers, who is the drummer for Good Riddance, like easily one of the drummers that a lot of punk folks talk about. Solid, like he was the first drummer I ever played with. He was a senior and I was a no, he was a junior and I was a freshman. And then my sophomore year, again, we played in like total like punk bands. I forget what they were called. It
so
was like Next in Line, or I forget what we called
so even
ourselves.
even though I don't really watch this channel
Uh-huh.
or this YouTuber, I was watching it. Probably they were discussing probably something GI Joe or Valaverse.
Hmm.
Was I noticed that, and I don't know if it was just the name or what,
Hmm.
but Laser Pants was wearing a Good Riddance hat.
Oh, okay.
And it made me wonder, like, does he actually like Good Riddance, or did he just see the hat and thought it was cool or whatever?
Or he was like,
Because
"I
you
love
never
that
know.
Green Day song, so I'm gonna" no, I'm just kidding. Yeah.
So okay, so you started playing music all through high school.
I was sorry, can I just pause before we go? Because I just saw this stuff in the chat.
I wish I knew how to
Someone
make. I wish I knew how to make it so you could.
Oh, no, you're all good, but Clint Jorgensen said 80s sitcoms had great music as well. 100%, 80s and
Yeah.
70s, and then
Oh,
somebody else
I love 80s.
but, like, if like, for me, because I ended up playing bass, and there was a reason I, like, played bass, and it wasn't just, like, people were like, "Oh, yeah, it's the easiest instrument," like, that's a perfect example when you say, like, people don't understand a thing like skating, right? You don't understand, instruments or music if you just think any instrument is easy or, like, it's, "Oh, yeah, that's not a real instrument, guitar's hard," or whatever. It's like, "Nah, dude." But 70s stuff, especially because of the funk influence. Someone mentioned later Night Court. Yeah, that was like one of the first things that I would play, especially like slapping. It's like boom, boom,
Oh, okay.
boom, 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 or DuckTales, boom, boom, boom,
Well,
boom, boom. So, and then Chips or SWAT. Did you ever watch SWAT as a kid?
no, but I watch Chips.
Okay, SWAT's theme song. You ever listen to it? It's the jam. Like it's so damn good. Sanford and Son.
Yep.
Ba-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Um, all those good times, Jefferson's, like all that stuff, loved. And to this day, like, I don't know, man, that's an instant good time for me to just be like, just like looking at old toy commercials, looking or listening to on a music app or looking on YouTube of like old TV show theme songs. Like
But I,
it's
I
like it's
think
just
so.
pops right
Like,
out.
so when someone says like, "Oh, you play bass, that's easy,"
Mhm.
that's easy compared to guitar. That's equivalent of saying, "Oh, you skate a mini half. That's not as hard as a vert ramp." Well, you're right, but it takes two skill sets.
Right.
There's two different skill sets. But with music, listen to some music without bass. Like listen, I'm sorry, listen to actual music played with instruments.
Mhm.
Don't get me started on that one. But listen
Mhm.
to an actual band that doesn't have a bass.
Slap at a bass. Yeah.
You
Uh-huh.
go, God, this sounds really weird because now you just have guitar and drums. Or try and listen to a band without drums, and you go, ooh, that's interesting.
Sure.
I
And let
know
me
there's
just,
acoustic. I know there's
yeah,
acoustic. I know there is.
no. Well, where I was going to go was like technically, I could jump on a skateboard and try and ride whatever. Like I could ride a ramp. I could do it. Am I good? No. So I will submit that there's like a lot of people who play bass that aren't like, I wouldn't say are particularly good. They're playing whatever, play with heart or whatever. But like, it's just an oversimplification to say, oh yeah, that whole instrument, like that sucks or whatever. But what folks are naming, like they're naming my stuff, even Greatest American Music, like yeah, it might not be the bass that I like, but the theme song, Greatest American Hero, fantastic, right? And then somebody else said when doves cry, man, like any Prince, moi, and is it Gegense 78 or Google whatever?
Do you want my answer to this?
Who? Oh, is that you or me? Oh, he's
No.
probably talking to you. I'm assuming Ray knows me. He knows I'm not. Yeah, no, he's got to be
Actually, I don't
talking to
hate
you.
Prince. But I don't feel I need to listen to a Prince song. But I don't hate Prince. Like there are some artists that I absolutely hate, but Prince is just one of those. He's there. And I'm
My
not trying to
favorite.
take away from their talent because
No, sure, dude.
you know,
He was.
I hate that whole. I hate when someone goes, "Well, you can't do it." Well, okay, guess what? All these sports announcers, all these people talking sports on the radio, most of them didn't play and can't play. Are you saying they can't have an opinion on it? I can still have an opinion on things. Your opinion doesn't have to be mine.
Mm-hmm.
Just like if someone says when you're talking about the G.I. Joe or something, well, you couldn't design it. All right, well, that has nothing to do with it. I'm telling you my opinion on it.
Sure.
But yeah.
Well, I'll just also say like NES music. People were saying same thing. I don't forget on this past Sunday's news on the channel. We were looking at a custom, and I mentioned Karnov, and I just started humming the music. Like all those old games that I played with, all the music is here. And I don't know if you ever checked out bands like The Advantage or the Mini Bosses. A lot of them were not former punk, were people in punk bands that like would just take 8-bit music and play it like with instruments and stuff, and made like whole albums on it. Amazing stuff. Because then you can hear. When you listen to it, you're like, oh my God, like I had no idea I played that game the entire time, but that's totally a metal song, but it was all through like chiptune, right? Tones on the Nintendo.
It's very interesting to hear an artist or to hear a band, an artist with an instrument, take a sound that was digital and do it on an instrument. Again, I know, like, again, when it comes to rap, to me, it's kind of like play an instrument, dude. And I can't play an instrument. And I know people get mad at me,
I'm not mad at you, but you're wrong. But
scratch your record, do whatever you want. I don't care.
Man,
I do like some of the early stuff.
Dude,
there's no
how
doubt
punk
about
rock is that? Come on, real quick. I'm gonna submit to you. Now, how punk? I'll say how punk rock, but how punk is it to be like to live in an environment where you're like, we don't have instruments. We're not like those kids in the suburbs who had a guitar and a bass or drums or whatever. So we took my dad's 45s and my dad's LPs and we put them on two things, and I played just the break, the part where it's instrumental. And I took another copy of that record and I played it on this one, and I found that I could loop it. Dude, that's like innovation, creation, punk rock DIY as it gets, in my opinion.
To me, that's saying, oh, well, we're not the rich kids. We can't afford an ice rink and ice skates, so we'll just run around and play street hockey.
No, but you mean you think that's equivalent? I don't think it's an analogy, because you're literally taking something else to make music. Well, whatever. My point is, I disagree with you that like, dude, it's music. Music is music. Yeah, some things maybe are. It's kind of like what you were saying earlier about skating, man. It's just like, it's so hard. Like, I don't know. I've tried beat matching. It's not the easiest, most distinctive thing to do. But anyway, I appreciate art and creators, man. That's just where I'm at. Whether it's in toys.
And again, I'm always been like this.
I know.
I push
Oh,
back,
I can tell.
and someone
Uh-huh.
wants to push back at me, they can
Yeah.
push back at me. Like again, I dish it out, so
Yeah.
I'm more than willing to take it. I think a lot goes back to we got no credit. Like me listening to punk, like it got no credit. When people would say, you know, even to this day, oh my God, it is amazing what LeBron James is doing at age 35. Really?
Uh-huh.
Because Tony Hawk broke his fucking femur at 54, and then he was skateboarding again 6 months later. No, that's impressive. Oh, and let me tell you something. It's 1,000 times harder to ride a skateboard than to shoot a basketball. But we always got put down. You know what I mean? And when people are raving over what LeBron is doing, oh, you mean with the best nutrition, the best, uh, the best. Um,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
so,
Allow me to push back.
but that's my pushback when people
Sure,
would
sure,
tell
sure.
you like, oh yeah, punk is
That
not for
skating's not
basic.
a sport, or yeah, totally.
Yeah,
Right? Yeah. One, it's like I think both, like the premise is totally flawed. Like you're right. Skating is a sport. Skating takes skills, skating takes athleticism, endurance, some sense of geometry if you take it to that. Like it's and physics. But basketball, teamwork, like, there's, but again, to compare them, I think it's like it's silly. It's kind of like I could sit here and talk about a Four Horsemen Mythic Legions figure versus I don't know, a Super 7. And yeah, like we know how that conversation goes, and we can say one, but the notion of one's better or one's worth or one sucks, like, I mean, ultimately it's just two people's opinions. But if we wanted to be objective about it, like you could probably break it down. Well, let's talk articulation. Sure. Mythic Legions wins. Sculpt and design. Like I think there's a
but
way to do it, but like to
no,
then try and reduce it to like, well, one's good and one's bad. It's like boring. I don't care.
again, listen,
I don't care.
I like sports.
Yeah.
Okay, so but what I'm saying is when I've listened to people for so many years, and especially when you're young,
Night, Capitan.
you have that pushback, right?
Yep. Yep.
And I was into sports, but as I
Yep.
get older, I look and I go, you look at these basketball players.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you have to have natural skill, but
Yep.
you can learn how to do like. But what you're doing is relatively easy. Now to perfect it is different. Same with golf. You're hitting a ball; it's not moving.
Mm-hmm.
Then you look at hockey, and you're like, you have to know how to skate. You have to
Yep.
know how to skate backwards. You have
Yep.
to understand how to
Fight.
shoot. It takes so much more talent.
Yeah.
When it comes to football, you have to know where you're at all times. But again, it's just one of those things. And when I look back, and I'm like, I will tell you, skateboarding is one of the most challenging things athletically because most people can't even ride a skateboard, which I don't understand. To me, I don't know how people just can't ride a skateboard, but it's second nature to me. It's
Yeah.
absolute second nature to me. So I mean, I understand that people can't. I look at it and say, how can you not just jump on that board and ride down the street? I'm not talking about doing tricks,
Yeah.
but I've sat at the skate park and I've watched people, guys that ride skateboards, and I'm like, they have no business being on it. They scare me. I think they're going to die every time they're riding on it.
Yeah.
And I'll see them do a hard trick, and I'm like, how did that even happen?
Mm-hmm.
How did that person learn that trick? But when I see them just ride, I'm like, you look like you've never rode a skateboard before. So that's where a lot of my pushback comes.
Sure.
I didn't think we'd go here. That's for sure.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, all of this stuff. I think any athlete worth their salt, like who's really like at the one takes it super seriously and is passionate about it and like is really trying to be one of the best or greatest, or any artist or musician doing the same. I think I don't, this is just a random statement, but I think it's true because I've heard some people at that caliber talk, and in my old age have finally been able to actually hear what they're saying, is that recognizes that everything to do it well takes time, effort,
I
all of that stuff, and some talent. So that's where I come from in the sense of like, oh, this takes more, this takes less. It's like
okay.
it's like apples oranges, right? And it's to me a fruitless conversation that you know, I don't know. I've met a couple like pro skaters, like hardcore skaters. I don't. So this is weird. Like it's not the name dropping thing, but we can get to that later. But the thing is, it's just like sorry, let me circle back. Right around when the X Games was starting to become popular and extreme sports and all of that, right? There was this opportunity to like bring skating to some recognition and some sort of quote unquote legitimacy in people's eyes,
Yeah.
right? And I think a lot of people's eyes were opened as people started performing and they're like, whoa, like I would never be able to do that, much less attempt it or whatever. And I've just found that it's more of this other hangups, this other BS that kind of keeps people in these weird mindsets that like, oh, that's not sports, or that takes no talent, or the bass is not an instrument, or Super 7 Ultimates are not good toys. Like to me, it's just like I feel like for me, that's totally just noisy and a distraction. And I've kind of just come to this point where it's like, man, I can appreciate this stuff because not just as a like, I'm just going to be positive for the sake, like, no, like I actually think it's objectively true that all of this stuff is freaking can be amazing, is amazing, and I got to appreciate like the time, effort, energy, the wherewithal to do a thing, whether that's Tony Hawk going 360 or LeBron James on the court figuring out different teams.
Okay.
Like anyway, go ahead,
So
jump in.
Ray Pass says, I don't agree though, Lawrence. Everything is about dedication. Some are more talented than others at almost everything. I'm not disagreeing.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that if I dedicated every single hour of my life to playing basketball, I would be as good as Michael Jordan. I'm not saying that at all.
Yep.
What I am saying, and this is something that bothers me, is that you have LeBron who's 35 and everyone's like, oh my God, he's doing this at such an amazing age. What I'm saying is that I don't think it's amazing to be doing something at a high level at 35. Skateboarders have been doing it for quite some time. And it is a much harder thing to do because you have multiple things that have to go into it. I also will say when I hear, again, I listen to a lot of sports. I watch Steph Curry saying basketball is a man's game. Really, because I watch him get a little toe injury and then they have to be carried off the court. But I watch Chris Joslin eat shit on a handrail and get up and go, let's do this again. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think there's a different respect level or dedication level that you see with some of these smaller hockey players are a perfect example. Like they are born to play hockey. And they break a finger and they come back out. They get 18 stitches in their fucking face and they come out. But you see a basketball player and they're done. And hey, I have my $50 million a year. I don't need to play. They're taking time off. I don't know how we got on this.
We were talking music anyways, but we were talking about
we haven't even got to like graduating high school yet.
Oh shoot. Well, I'll tell you. Okay, let's go back to music. I played accordion, played piano for the longest time. Was like I was into it, picking out tunes, had an ear for it. And but then when I was 14, right around the time I was going to shows, I picked up the bass. We had a bass in our house because my dad, at one point, he had some old childhood friends from the Philippines who kind of became big in the Philippines with a band called Hot Dog of all things. But they kind of innovated.
Wait, did they sing the Hot Dog song?
No, but
you know what I'm talking about, right?
What's the Hot Dog song?
The Mickey Mouse Hot Dog song?
Diggity dog. No.
Sorry.
I have kids.
I know
Mickey
that's
Mouse,
why.
Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. Can we just finish the lyric? And Kayla's not here, but come inside, it's fun inside.
Oh my god.
Okay. So anyway, music playing 14 I picked up the bass. And we had one because my dad at one point, his friends were this band in the Philippines who were actually going to do a tour in the United States, and they asked him to play bass with them. That we all of a sudden we had all these instruments in the house because like they were practicing for this tour that started in LA. And then but then the way he told me is like, yeah, I couldn't get your mom to be okay with me playing bass and then doing this tour with them. And it's like, all right. So anyway, I picked up his old bass. My brother, by this time, again, my brother's older. He was playing music. My brother was who introduced me to punk. Like he was, I remember being a kid and watching, I think, Another State of Mind. And just have you ever watched that old documentary, Another State
No,
of Mind? Okay.
I don't think so.
Another State of Mind, named after Social Distortion. It kind of follows Social Distortion, who was a couple towns away in Norwalk, or at least Mike
I was
Ness
never a
was.
Social Distortion fan. Like
Okay,
I don't dislike them, but I've never like, hey, I have to have. I actually think their
sure.
music's pretty good, but
So he introduced me to punk in general, and he started doing bands. He was like into Devo. I think he introduced me to Devo when I was in the first grade. Second grade. He would have been in the 7th grade. I remember for the talent show, him and his friend and a couple keyboards, and they did this Devo thing. Anyway, he introduced me to music and toys in many ways. So thank you, brother. But anyway, I did my own thing with it, and I ended up playing bass. I think the first song I played was actually a Social Distortion song, and then again, I was really into funk and like hip hop and stuff, and TV shows, Sanford and Son, and then eventually, like this was around the time I have I'm gonna guess you have strong opinions about the Red Hot Chili Peppers, or don't ever want to think about them ever.
I honestly I have no opinion of them.
Okay, fair enough. I thought that would have been one of those like,
I will say
what is
this:
that garbage?
I did work with a girl that slept with the drummer.
I'm sure there were many of those, but
Well,
sure.
he was from Michigan, and
Yeah,
you
Chad
know,
Smith.
and this was years and years ago. That
Okay.
yeah,
But I was really into their stuff too, because they were fusing things that I love, essentially like funk and hip hop and punk rock. And that's what they were doing, their version of it, right? Their
yeah.
very LA Hollywood version of it. But anyways, I started playing bass, and that was the thing. I was going to shows, and then eventually I was playing music. I told you that dude, Sean Sellers, he was in the same high school I was. He was into punk stuff, and I was like, yeah, dude, let's do it. Started playing in bands, and I pretty much was in a band from like 9th grade all the way through college, like some band, some
Yeah.
project, right? Um, and then I moved away after college. So college was like 94 to 98. I went to college, like I literally chose my colleges, dude.
First off,
No.
Machine Man. Hold on. First off, I never slept with her. My old friend did, and it's not Flea
And
because
not
Flea.
Flea, it's Chad.
Yeah. Is it? No. Who's the drummer?
Chad Smith.
Chad. Okay. So whichever one's from Michigan. I
It was
don't know
Chad.
anything about them. Like I said, I have.
Or is
Chad.
Chad Smith, or was it Jack Irons? I'm not sure, because they've
Chad
had a
Smith.
couple of different
I
drummers.
think it's
It's their
Chad Smith.
current, the most famous Red Hot Chili Peppers drummer, right?
Yeah.
I'm assuming.
But this,
Yeah, so
I
it's
mean,
Chad. It's Chad.
this would have been 30 years ago.
What year? Help me out, because when you say 30, it scares me to think about.
94.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, that's
Yeah, that
even
makes sense.
longer. I
So
don't know.
he would have just no, he would have been with the band for a good 6 years by then, or so.
Yeah. Whichever one's from
Um.
Michigan. That's all I know.
Anyway, yeah, what were we saying? Oh, so I chose my college. I applied to colleges. One, I wanted to get away from home. So love parents in the love your parents kind of way, but I also needed to get out of there for a bunch of different reasons. So I wanted to go far enough away that I didn't have to live at home. And I basically did it. And I wanted to stay in California. Well, I couldn't afford anywhere else for school. But I applied to schools based on punk scenes. So it was like San Diego, San Francisco, Goleta, Santa Barbara,
So where did you
and
go?
Santa Barbara, Goleta,
Okay.
and which was 2 hours away. And there were a bunch of like that actually was where the drummer from my band in high school ended up, because he joined a band called Downcast that was on Abolition Records,
Okay.
and so he did his thing, and then eventually from there he played with a couple different bands, and then moved to Santa Cruz up here, Santa Cruz. I was gonna say Santa Clara or Santa Carla, because Santa Cruz was Santa Carla in what's that movie? The vampires, Lost Boys. Anyways, my brain.
You're not a gaucho, right?
I mean, basically, like that's the school I went to. But again, you heard the part about sports. So
No. Wait, what school you went to?
Santa Barbara, those were the
Okay.
gauchos.
Oh, okay. Because Jim Rome went there.
Sure. Who's that?
The biggest sportscaster in the world.
Fair
The biggest
enough.
sports talk show host. I can't believe. I would assume you would. And he's got to be one of the most famous people from there.
I don't know, but John Madden, wasn't he he did sports talk as well and played, didn't he?
Yeah, but
I know him because of the video game. But yeah, that's how I learned sports, dude. That's when I finally understood the rules of baseball, was because of Intellivision baseball. Like if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have known what the hell I was doing on that baseball field. But so yeah, Sean Sellers was in a punk band, hardcore band up in Goleta. I knew the scene. I'd met people, and I was doing zines at the time. I was writing people, and I knew a bunch of people in Goleta. I was like, you know what, I'm going there. I think I was actually one of the two schools that I got into, so it's not like I had a choice. But so I went there, and dude, thriving punk DIY scene, man. And it was punk. So it was like I had an instant group of people, right? Like I was going there not with a bunch of strangers, so I didn't have to worry about like all the college stuff. It was like, yeah, dude, I know people who go to shows, and it was a spot that touring bands would come through.
So were you playing in a band while you were in college?
Yeah, I played in total of 3 different projects, 4 technically, but yeah, man. I was playing in bands in college. I still had my band with high school friends in LA while I was playing music there. So there was another dude. So again, I swear, people were like, dude, are you name dropping? Like, this is just the story.
No,
So
listen.
yeah,
It's not name dropping if you're telling a story and someone who has a name, is in. Name dropping is like,
sure.
oh, you know who my friend, like you're telling a story that just happens to be with someone that,
People who kind of people know.
yeah, you
Sure.
can't help that.
Fair enough. I just want to name that, especially when you're coming from a punk background. You know how punks have to apologize. But anyway, so in high school, I was playing in bands, and there was this kid. So it's Orange County hardcore / straight edge scene. And I know, punk is a very white scene, and not all white. Like we know, like I said, Bad Brains and all that. Like we know this, but in the main, especially in Orange County, white. And so
Agree mostly.
well, it was. I mean, like I could give you all of these face to face, but I could give you all like all these hardcore and show you the pictures. Like,
No, there's not.
okay,
I mean,
yeah,
seriously, if you ask me, there's
yep,
Burn, who's
yep,
singer, and you
yep,
have
yep.
Bad Brains. Which
And
quickly, I want you to just keep that
yeah,
thing.
I'll keep
Sick of
going.
It
Yeah.
All on their latest album, or one
Uh-huh.
of their latest albums. They have a song called "Crazy White Boy Shit," and it's a
Uh-huh.
song about the Bad Brains. And the reason why they did it was they said when they were younger, they were listening to it,
Mhm.
and these black guys were saying that's
Yeah,
crazy white boy shit, not
totally.
realizing what they were referring to was actually the Bad Brains.
Totally.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it's not the most diverse scene.
No, it's not, but there were folks. So the point is, where I was going with that is people of color,
Mhm.
folks of color, as you use that phrase, which I use, but we saw each other. we recognized each other, and you know, it was just like it. And sometimes it was like a safety in numbers thing, because like the Huntington Beach straight edge versus the Nazis was a thing, and I was engaged in those battles several times in Huntington Beach on Main Street. So like that's a reality. And so there was this kid named Steve Aoki who eventually, like, even my students, like with the name Steve Aoki comes up, they're like, wait, what? Like, because he's become this like crazy DJ guy. And so um and so anyway, like I met him in high school because I was doing bands, and he was like, oh, hey, what's up? And then he ends up going to UC Santa Barbara. He's a year younger than me, the next year. And so like musically, I ended up doing projects with him and my friend Francis, who eventually ended up being in the band that I like did the most with later as an adult. But so Steve ended up, he had a record label, Dimmock, like one of the, I was just looking at this stuff here. I was like, man, what I like, you know, helping him. Like I learned graphic design by, in school, I was an art major, and like he was doing his record label. I was like, dude, can you do, sorry, I was about to do a Steve Aoki impression, but can you do buddy, can you do this design, this cover from, like, yeah, I want to do that. And you know, whatever. And I learned that stuff. Again, it was DIY. It was like, let me figure out Photoshop. Let me figure this out. Let me, you know, figure out graphic design by cutting up stuff and pasting it and going to a FedEx Kinko's and figuring out how to scam and like get free copies, or like whatever it was. Right. Yeah. Tony knows him. Aoki. And so he ends up doing this record label. And when we finally do a band as adults, yeah, Steve Aoki, the now pizza restaurateur, Steve Aoki, the dude is prepping to go to space. I don't know if he ever ended up going to space. Steve Aoki, the owner of the esports video game team, like that's Steve Aoki, who is freaking wild where that kid has gone. But he ended up doing a record label. So eventually, as an adult, I moved to San Francisco after school. I'm doing the thing out here. I thought I was sort of done with guitar-oriented music, like that kind of stuff. And here you go. I started doing stuff with like electronic stuff and some DJing stuff. Yeah, it doesn't take any skill, right? And I was just playing with that because I was kind of burnt on this thing and I wanted to do something different. Then my friend from Santa Barbara, who ended up transferring to UC Berkeley, is like, hey, man, I met this guitar player. He does just some different kind of stuff. Are you familiar with a band called Don Caballero at all? Don Caballero?
No.
Okay. And so this was the time when like Mogwai was a thing. Godspeed You Black Emperor. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but these sort of like long instrumental bands were doing this, and a lot of them were former punks who were doing 3-chord stuff or hardcore stuff. But they, like me at the time, were kind of like, that's cool. I kind of want to explore some different things, right? For the toy folks in here, it's the equivalent of, no offense to folks, but you've been collecting Mattel Masters of the Universe, and all of a sudden you discover, wait, what's this Mythic Legions thing? Oh, that's kind of cool. It's new. It's different. It was kind of the same thing. I was like exploring new different stuff. But he's like, hey, there's this guitar player. He does this amazing stuff. He's really good. Would you just come in and play bass with us? So I was like, oh, you know, I'm not really into it anymore. But he said, no, just come through. Let's check it out. And I did. And I was like, wow, yeah, this is really cool. This is different. They were open to mixing in the stuff that I was doing at the time with this, like, electronic music, samples. I was doing a whole lot of like artsy sampling stuff from movies and documentaries and mixing that in. And so I ended up forming this band that like was like 10 years of my life and allowed me to travel to parts of the world that I never thought I would ever be able to travel to. And so we toured Europe 3 times, Japan twice. They did a 3rd time that I couldn't do. So I was like, somebody else ended up doing that last tour with them. And then a bunch of times in the United States, and which brings me to Hamtramck, right? Which is where I think, I forget where I think it was this summer where I was just listening to you while I was in Hawaii, of all places, on vacation. I was listening to you doing your live stream, and I don't know, somehow it came up, and I was like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, I played in Detroit one time, and I looked it up on Google. I was like, what is this play? I don't remember anymore. Found an old thing that listed out like gigs of the band. I was like, oh yeah, this was the place, Smalls, right? Is that what it's called? And but yeah, like that band through Steve Aoki, because we were on his label, like I didn't have to like do with anything. And at that time he was growing. At that time he had gotten some attention for co-releasing a Block Party record. The first, are you familiar with that band at all? Have you heard of them?
No.
Okay.
There was a
It was
time
like,
I wasn't listening to anything
sure.
other than like the old like 90s punk, 80s punk that I listened to,
Yeah.
80s music.
Yeah. Late 90s, or like this band from the UK. He co-released it with Vice Records. Are you familiar with Vice? It used to be Vice Magazine. They do Vice News
I know
now. It's
Vice
on
Magazine.
HBO.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then that they were doing a record label, so they co-released it, got a lot of attention. His back catalog and everything else he was doing grew. He was doing the DJ thing, so he was kind of doing these sort of dance party things, and it all kind of became it all just kind of became a thing, to the point where I was telling him, hey Steve, I'm doing music again with Francis. The three of us were in a little band together in Santa Barbara. He's like, really? Send it to me. And I was like, dude, it's just a demo. We're just like, cool. Send it to him. He's like, I'm going to release this. I'm like, wait, what? And that became a thing. And so ended up releasing 4 records with Steve, and then like EPs and stuff. And it touring and did that whole thing. And that was all while also teaching. So
Okay. Answer
yeah.
this really quick, if you don't mind.
Oh, sure. Am I Honolulu, Kauai? Okay, so here's the deal. I've only been to Hawaii twice in my life. The second time was just this past summer. So I don't really know much about Hawaii. So the first time I went was on a vacation with my family and our friend's family. They have kids the same age. Got an Airbnb in Honolulu, North Shore, not too far from the like Mormon Polynesian Center thing. Sorry, that's real rude. The Polynesian Cultural Center. And then this past summer we stayed in Honolulu. So like we've only just done that. I have yet to explore the rest of it, and I would love to go, but that's just the reality.
All right, so you started touring. Now you had already graduated. I would assume you said you're teaching.
Oh yeah. Sorry. So this was in, I went to high school. It helps me. Sorry, I'm old now. 90 to 94 was high school. 94 to 98 was college. And then I moved to here in the Bay Area on Thanksgiving Day of 1998. And I've lived here since then. So I've like done the math, and I've pretty much
So
been
how were you
in
able
the
to
Bay
tour?
Area for most of my life now.
How were you able to tour while teaching? Did you only go out on the week, or on? Did you only tour during the summer, other than
spring break and
playing
summer?
Local show. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was. That connects back to what I was saying about like jealous of you all East Coasters, because like I knew people in bands and they could do something in a weekend and hit up like 3 big areas and get their music out there. That wouldn't work for us.
Yeah, but you still have Denver, Arizona.
Yeah, but you can't get to Denver on a weekend.
Yeah, but
you know how long the drive is from here to Arizona, and then from Arizona?
No.
Like, yeah, you could drive from like New York to then play Jersey, and
I understand what you're saying. Where even though you're going to cover as much ground, it's all going to be the same people. But it's the same. It's going to be the same thing. If you look at Jersey, those people are going to DC. They're going up to New York. They're going to Jersey. So even though, yeah, you're covering more ground, I think you're still kind of hitting the same people. But I understand what you're saying.
You think? But because New York,
I mean, New Jersey.
No, I'm just saying that like there's more people to play to and to spread to, and then many, I don't know.
Okay. Oh, well. Yeah,
but for me, ultimately, it is you make your gas money and can go further. That was the biggest thing on the West Coast. We've done like every time we do tours, it's like, damn, we can't wait to get east, because like to get to the next stop, it's like, oh shit, what is that?
Now,
we can do.
Now, did you enjoy touring?
No.
Okay, because my buddy,
I enjoyed being on the road and having that experience, but I have by no means like a road dog. Like, and mind you, I'm a pretty grounded person. Remember, I was saying my brother was always kind of like, dude, you always sort of had friends. Like, I always kind of try and find an established community. So I had roots here, even though I didn't grow up here. I had my partner and I have been together since, like, my girlfriend and I, or my girlfriend, sorry, my wife, then girlfriend, have been together since 1998, dude. That's like a long time. And so we've been together during the band. So there's always sort of like a reason to be homesick, but also like, I don't know. I think I was into punk, but like dude, I was like in my late mid 20s and later. And like, you should have seen some of the places we stayed at or sleeping in the car. And it
well,
was like, you know what I'm saying?
so yeah, so my buddy, um, my buddy that he plays now, but so I didn't talk to him in years, and someone told me he's in a band,
Mm-hmm.
and this was really before like cell phones were cell phones, and so when
Yeah.
Facebook started, and it might not even been Facebook.
MySpace.
No, no, because he wasn't on Facebook for the longest time. He got on, he's off, and now he's only on Instagram. But um, we reconnected maybe like 7, 8 years ago, right?
Yep.
And I'm like the only person that will still go to his shows, like of
Mm-hmm.
all the old friends. And actually, I haven't even seen his new band. So there was a big gap when he was touring, and so I had only heard about it, but you
Mm-hmm.
weren't able to follow like you are now, right? And I've talked to him about it, and he's just like, it was awful. He goes, "You're living off $10 a day."
Mm-hmm.
He goes, "One of my band members was my roommate. Do you know what it's like to want to punch him in his face for how he breathes?" He goes, "I think when we went." He goes, "When we went overseas, I think the only thing I have ever done was go to um, Disneyland in Japan, right?
Oh,
One
nice.
time,
Yep. Tokyo Disney.
yeah, yeah, one time for one day." He goes, "We never had money. You're driving from place to place, sleeping in the worst spots ever." He's vegan, straight edge. So he's like, being the only straight edge guy in the band. Guess who always had to drive after they got drunk?
Yeah. Yeah. That's rough.
So he said, it got to be frustrating. But he
Uh-huh.
goes, he's like, we're not making money. So you don't get to experience those places. He goes, you look at like Pennywise, Bad Religion, Sick of It All. These bands, like, it is their life. Like,
Yeah.
they are making a
It's work.
career out of it.
Yep.
They have the chance when on their days off, where they have the money that they can go
Oh,
hang
sure.
out, go do the
Now.
yeah. Which you're right, they didn't. And he said when you're in your 20s, it's cool, but I could not imagine doing it in my 40s with my kids.
Nope.
Having kids and leaving behind. It's one thing if you're Pennywise. I think only pretty much only tours like 3 months out of the year now, other than they play shows in an area or do festivals, right? Same with
Yeah.
like Bad Religion and these bands.
Sure.
And I never looked at it like that because you just think, oh, you're making more money than that. He's like, man, you're living off $10 a day.
And for the most
Sometimes,
part, I will say the beginning, of course, the band versus the end of the band were very different realities. By the end of it, like if we had continued, like our next tour would have been figured out financially because we got to the point where like we could establish the guarantees. So we could count on stuff and actually do a budget and maybe, you
you
know,
learn a lot.
yeah, and like I think by the time we were ending those last couple of tours, it was like, oh, like we actually get to pay for rooms to sleep in versus rooms together. But still, it wasn't like, hey, dude, after the show, find someone, talk to someone, and see if they'll let us crash in their home and or in their driveway so that no one breaks into the van or whatever it is, like that was the reality and that's but it was like, okay, so it's no different than the YouTube channel in my brain, where it's like I'm having fun doing this thing that I love. It's a creative outlet for me. And like I've always kind of been into building a thing and making a thing. It started like the zine thing that we talked about before, or
Yeah.
doing like the record labels that, or whatever. It was like building a thing, creating a thing, regardless of that thing's going to make money or whatever. Obviously, like I'm in a different stage. I have 2 kids. So like money matters, but like as like I was serious earlier when I said like a career, like I'm a teacher, and there was some level of like, oh, that's great to hear.
And I don't want to bore people. I'm glad that
Yeah.
people enjoy it.
But you know, as like it was different, and compared to like, you know, I did have a job, and then that job afforded me the summer where we could hit the road more and record. And man, it was wild being a teacher, because I remember like, you know, especially talking to new teachers, they're like, dude, this is so stressful. How do you do anything? And I was like, man, I remember my first couple years, I was in a band. I'd play, I'd drive down to Oakland, which I was in Daly City, driving out to Oakland, which then you could do in about 22 minutes, but with traffic now, no way. Cross the bridge, practice to like 12 something, go home, wake up, be a zombie, play, like teach, grade, do all that stuff. But I had energy. I was 20 something, right?
Yeah.
But
A lot
then
more
we
energy
play,
when we're younger.
yeah, and then we'd play shows, and then it would be like the same thing, except you'd play the show till like 2 a.m. Then you'd have to drive back to Oakland, because that's where our stuff was, unload the van, and then I'd have to get my butt back home by maybe 4, wake up at like 6 and teach. So it was wild, right? But again, we were young, we had energy, and I just loved doing a thing. And so when I think about, you were saying earlier about like how much work goes in, and you say this a lot on your stream, like a lot of work goes into having a channel. And it's one thing to be like, I have my toys, I'm going to open it up, but it's like, oh no, I got to wait because I'm going to record this, and when's this going to release, and I'm going to edit it, or even doing the live stream, right? But we do it because we're into it, and it's fun, and it's a cool creative outlet for us. And to me, it's very much wrapped into the punk rock thing, or punk, if you will. I'll leave out the rock, where it's like,
I've actually learned to enjoy saying punk rock.
yeah,
I think
like
it has to do with street dogs and
yeah. Plus, I'm just, yeah. There's a nostalgic bit there, just like we have the toys. Like I'm nostalgic about punk rock now. I'm like freaking 47. Like that's a part of who made me who I am. So, but yeah, there's that punk ethos that's just like, you know, I'm into it because I want to build it, and it's a DIY thing. I'm connecting with people. That was the big thing for me and punk rock, was meeting people all over the world. Like I was a high schooler. This is before internet, where you'd write people letters, and you'd have these networks, and people would send you flyers from like what's happening in there, and you'd send them flyers and check out this band, check out this tape.
Well, I think we were talking about, I think it was on Largo's Lair. I think you dropped in. I'm like, we found out about bands by opening up the cassette tapes and reading the other bands that they thanked. And you're like, oh my God, who is this band? Pennywise liked them. We need to go buy it. And sometimes you'd buy it and you go, this is awful. This is awful. They must just be friends with them.
Well, you said Pennywise earlier, and you were mentioning your friend was comparing what their touring reality to like Pennywise's touring reality.
Yeah.
And you named it, like they only tour a certain amount of times, but also they get guarantees, they got booking managers, etc. Like, do you do it as DIY, man? Like we were doing it all. I was designing the merch. At one point we were silk screening the t-shirts. Like you were just doing it. And so yeah,
and you're carrying all the equipment. You don't have roadies.
No, no, not at all. And so, so by the end of it, our booking manager, who was kind of doing it for free, like we weren't hiring, but he also worked for one of the largest talent agencies in Hollywood. And so I would see, like I don't want to bust them out. Oh, whatever. It's been so long. At one point, I don't know if he still does, but he was also booking, like he'd book a bunch of other people. And then he was like, we were one of his pet projects because he liked us. He was into the band and wanted to do it. And so he was like booking Devo. And just for reference, right, to help us as we got to that later stage, I was like, dude, I don't even know how to like plan out a budget, or like what's that like, or you know, like now Steve Aoki, Dimok, now they're giving us money, like here's a chunk of money to go on the road, like here's a guarantee, here's this, or whatever. And it was like, or not a guarantee, I forget the term, but like here's a chunk of money to go do tour, we're gonna give you money for a budget. Like, not, you don't have to pay us back. Like, this is just, we're funding or investing in the tour or whatever. Like, that was a different reality. But I didn't know what to do. So this dude, she's like, well, here, I'm going to share this with you. Here's Devo's tour budget. And I opened up this spreadsheet. Wild. Just the amount of money they're doing for like a handful of stadium shows. And like all the people that are employed to support them that are part of like their people. And I was like, yeah, that's a whole other reality. And when you get to that stage, because Devo obviously didn't start that, they were like one of the most punk things ever, both in terms of sound and outlook and all of these things. But they became that, and they grew, and we stopped. I stopped. I opted to say I was done. And a lot of that has to do with like wanting new things. So we played our last show in 2010, and my firstborn was in 2011. So.
And you haven't played, so you're done with, not gonna say you're done with music, but you're done.
Yeah, kinda. Like, I haven't done anything like that in a while. That was, I was texting with Steve not too long ago, and that was his first question. So you doing anything musically? Anything I can check out? And I was like, no, man, not really.
No,
so,
Todd, this is live. This is live.
It is 8:40 p.m. on the West Coast and late on your coast, about to be midnight.
Tomorrow's Friday. I can sleep in, right?
So anyway,
and I kind of like you didn't say you quit, and I like that because I stopped skating for 10 years. I don't think I rode a board for 10 years. I never said I quit. No. To me, quitting is when you're like, I'm done. I'm never doing this again. When people say, oh, you quit skating for 10 years, I go, no, I stopped. They're like, life got in the way. My son came along, then my daughter.
Yep.
Did I ever think I'd be skating as much as I was after my ex and I split up? No. Like that threw me into it, you know?
Yep.
But I never said that I quit because I'm a skateboarder. I'm a skateboarder. Like that's, if you ask me what I was, what I am, I tell you I'm a skateboarder. Even when I wasn't skating, I'm looking at handrails, ledges, steps, even though I know I can't do
totally.
It's like, and I tell people, I go, there's a difference between a skateboarder and a person who skateboards. And they're like, that doesn't make any sense. Listen, you don't have to be the best person. You don't have to be the best skater to be a skateboarder. And you could be the best skateboarder and just be someone who rides a skateboard, because there are people that can put that board down for a year, not give two shits about it. They don't miss it. Then they pick it up and it's like they never missed a beat. And then there's guys like me who didn't do it for 10 years, but we still, every single day, I saw it every day. Dude, I'm with my fingers. Like, I'm still picturing myself, even when I wasn't skating, thinking that I could do it, thinking about old shit. And it's like, you don't have to be the most talented to be that. And I think that's like, I think musicians are the same way. Now, don't get mad at me when I say this. I think it's easier to be a musician in your 50s than a skateboarder, because
I mean, I don't think it's as a certain type of musician who has a certain level of comfort and all that stuff, for sure.
Yeah. But you can play the guitar, and at the end, you're not like, my knees hurt, my ankles hurt, I fell on the concrete.
Yeah.
Yes, Todd, it's been a long stream, all my streams, but hey, we went off on a lot of different things.
The band name, by the way, was From Monument to Masses. I just sent you a link because I just realized we were talking about hair earlier. And sadly, because of the band, so much of my various haircuts were documented and on the internet. But yeah.
All right. So you stopped playing in 2010.
Stop playing with the band. Yeah.
Your band. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You have your first child.
Yep.
So how did you ever get out of toys, or did you get back into toys?
So remember the Lego thing? That started in college.
And you started with the most expensive toys.
But as you know, straight edge.
I didn't mean to ask you. Are Are you still straight edge?
I mean, I don't like. I love it. Again, I'm nostalgic for, but I don't really drink. I don't do any of that stuff. Like I could probably count the number of drinks I've had in my life on my hands. And so, but like I was straight edge up and like, when did I quit, quote unquote, break edge to kind of like mess around and not even like get drunk. Like literally it was because I was a community organizer. And so organizing here in the Bay, we were organizing Philippine, like there was a set of Filipino businesses that were being pushed out because of .com stuff, and they had like restaurants or whatever, and like you do whatever, like you're trying to get to know these folks. Like I'm not going to be like, hey, I'm vegan, I can't eat your food. I can't be like, you're offering me this drink, I'm not going to pay attention to you. It was just sort of like a thing. And so yeah, Tony, I've heard that all my life. And so but yeah, and again, I could count it on two hands maybe, but I just, one, I wasn't into it. Two, I saw many things as a young person in my family
So
that
this is
revolved
a very
around
true
alcohol and
comment here.
drugs. Well, that's where I was going with the Lego thing. You were asking me, you started with the most expensive. I was a college student at UCSB. I think someone mentioned that person that you're talking about, Jim Rome in Isla Vista.
Yeah.
Isla Vista is like a party, like place. It's right out, it's the community right outside the Santa Barbara, and Santa Barbara is known as like this party school. And you save a lot of money when you're straight edge, I'll tell you that. And you're going to shows for like $5, not even $5 in Santa Barbara. We were
Dude,
just like
I still have a
$3.
problem paying $30 to go to a show. Like
Yeah.
$30.
Yeah.
I get mad because, you know, I wouldn't be mad if I went to go see Bad Religion and it was $30 and I knew $30 was going to them. But when I see Ticketmaster is taking $15 of it, that pisses me off.
Yeah, that's where like I pull in the band thing, and Steve and anybody else I help with the band, I was like, hey man, can you get me on the guest list? Or like, I want to go check out Rage's show in San Francisco. Do you think? Yeah, okay, cool. But yeah, no, I think the Lego thing happened largely because, again, I wasn't drinking, man. I knew kids who would like take their financial aid checks and freaking just spend so much on drugs and alcohol. I was like, what are you all doing? And I was like, okay, whatever. I'm going to the local Kmart and grab a bunch of Lego. And I'd also, at that time, I was grabbing the occasional action figures still, because that was like the Toy Biz era of like Marvel figures. We're getting Marvel action figures. And so I remember doing that. I remember in one of my early apartments, I was an art major and a communication studies major. It's like a social science major. And I was trying to get into this computer art class. And like you had to take all these prerequisites. Like, dude, nobody can do that. I can't afford to like take those classes. Like I need to get in and out of here. Unlike a lot of people at that school, I was like, dude, I'm here for school and I can't pay for more than 4 years. If I can do it even faster, great. But so I had to put together like a portfolio and show that I'd done stuff. So I was doing like early toy photography, and
Wow.
and I had a website. I don't forget, like I hope I have these files. I have these files either on what's called a Bernoulli or a zip drive somewhere, or anyway. But we didn't have digital cameras back then, or if they did, we didn't have access to them, but I had a scanner. So I'd literally take my figures and put them in the scanner, scan them, and then take the image and like put them into like environments. So I remember like a Magneto and on Asteroid M in space thing or whatever. It's like, and I did that. I remember specifically to get in this class to show like, no, I've been doing digital stuff for like years. Look at this portfolio I've amassed of stuff. Look, here's things I've done with toys and kind of worked it in, or like these fake projects were like, or band flyers or whatever it was, and got into the class. But yeah. Was that a thing people did random? I had no idea, but yeah, you just take the figure, you put it in the scanner and scan it in. It was like, boom, good enough.
So I gotta say this, and I've heard you talk about this before.
Yep.
When you said I'm going to Kmart and buying Lego,
Mm-hmm.
Lego, you didn't put an S on it.
Put an S on it.
because Lego
an
is already plural,
that's an
right?
AFOL habit, man. I
But
will tell you.
Lego
Okay.
is already plural, right?
Yep.
So what is the non-plural version of it?
Lego.
So it's the same no matter what.
Yeah. There are English examples, right? I'm blanking right now on them, but there are
Dear,
other words. Huh?
dear, dear.
Sure. Yeah. Right.
But I remember hearing you talk about that when you said Lego. It sounded
Mhm.
weird at first, but then I was like, okay, because we have Meyer here,
Uh-huh.
and if you say Myers,
Uh-huh.
my my ex's brother would always go, "How many did you go to?" Or Kroger. He would
Uh-huh.
say Kroger's. Fords. That's what.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I would get Fords. Really, which ones? Well, I
Yeah,
only
yeah,
get one.
totally.
Why would you say that?
Right.
Because you put it as plural.
Yep.
So I
Yeah. And
I
I will
remember
say,
you
okay,
talking, but I remember it was one of the first times I saw you
it was
streaming.
probably when I was with Kayla
It
doing
was
the Lego
it
thing.
was
Yep.
with you with Caleb for sure. And it was one of the first time I saw you, and you
Mhm.
go, "I'm not one of those people that get mad about it. Like a lot of
Yeah.
people will get really mad and correct you.
Uh-huh.
I'm just like, whatever."
Uh-huh.
I'm pretty sure that's what you said, but
Yeah,
I just
some
noticed that you said that,
well,
and I
because
kind
it
of want to
was
give everyone an education.
no, totally. And the whole premise of this the stream, and she had bought this expensive thing, and she's like, but I don't know anything about Lego. Can we do it as a stream? And we'll like, I was like, yeah, let's do it. And so the premise was to educate. And so it was like I hadn't done any Lego content on my thing. And so it was kind of like, well, yeah, let me talk to you about it and like introduce you to this world because it is a world. So with punk rock, you know how like people will be like, nah, dude, there's like, and you know, they'll educate you on different scenes or sounds. Like, no, there's emo core, and the true emo came from this, and then there's screamo, and then there's whatever, crusty punk. Like, there's all this stuff, right?
Yes.
Same with Lego, man. It's the same kind of, I say, noise, where it's like, no, it's Lego, not Legos, or AFOL. There's websites where you can go and they'll give you a glossary on terms you need to know.
Wow.
And some of it is actually practical because if you figure, like, how do you talk about these things? How do I distinguish one piece versus the other? And there's like real practical stuff of like, no, dude, it's a 2x4 brick. Oh, yeah, I get it. 2x4 brick versus a plate versus a tile. Anyways,
No,
yeah,
that makes sense because there's a lot of things when something gets explained, then you
yeah,
go, oh,
right.
like
Hmm.
kind of the same thing. My ex used to get really aggravated how I would fold the towels. And then one day I'm finally like, why does it bother you so much? What's the matter? We're just taking them out. And she goes, here, let me show you. She walked over to the closet. She's like, see
Uh-huh.
how small our closet is?
Mm.
If you fold them like this, when you close the door, it brushes up against it, but it won't mess them all up. And I
Mm-hmm.
said, why couldn't you just have told me this in the first place? Because now this makes sense. So there's a lot of those things in general that you'll
Uh-huh.
find out. And then I'm
Yep.
sure there's other things I know I have that you find out about other things and you're like, that's just stupid. But like you said about the brick, it makes sense. One's a tile, one's a
Yep.
brick, one's a 2x4.
Mm-hmm.
That makes
Yeah,
sense.
there's different categories of parts, and then there's the layout of the studs, 2x4, 2x6, whatever. And again, a lot of that is practical because especially if you get really hardcore and you're doing so the equivalent of I guess, buying action figures, whatever, on the aftermarket. There's this whole like essentially was like an eBay specifically for buying Lego. And so oh my God, it's been so long. I always forget it. And again,
I'm so
brick
glad.
set
Sorry.
or brick something. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I got. Oh, so listen,
Go for it.
I'm glad. So Random says I saw a little bit of
Thank
that
you,
stream. I
Random.
couldn't believe she bought that as her first set. Lego was my favorite toy as a kid. I remember. Okay, I remember seeing that, and I remember thinking, I hope he never asks me to come on and do this and expect me to buy like a $500 Lego set.
I never asked her to do
I,
nothing. Yeah. She literally, like, we'd known each other. Like, we became friends on whatever, on the GDL Discord, I think is where that happened. But she knew that like I was into Lego because everyone was like, oh, brick something. Are you into Lego? And then that kind of became a thing people knew about me. And then she's like, hey, I just saw that they're making the Lord of the Rings. God, what is the name of it's getting old? The elves, where the elves live. Anyways,
Mordor?
Rivendell.
No.
Rivendell set. Like $500, I think, is what it costs.
I think I looked it up and I was like, what?
Yeah.
God, like.
So, but she was getting it because she's a hardcore Lord of the Rings fan. Like to the point where like she was traveling to New Zealand, following the film stuff, and all that. And so that's why she ended up getting it, and then was like, hey, I want to do something with this. Like, can we do content out of it? What if we did? She proposed the whole, and it's like, cool, yeah, let's do it. And that became a thing that we did for a while.
That was when she's like, I've never had a Lego set before, and you're like, and I just remember like, I thought you did that, like I thought you did that type of stuff all the time. Like I thought like, that was part of like what you did, and I'm like, I hope he never asks me and thinks, hey, why don't you go buy that $500 Millennium Falcon? Because first off, I'd be here for the next 4 years trying to put it together.
Yeah, man. No. And Lego is a thing. And let me just show you real quick. Again, it's probably not the best way, but that's all Lego in a closet. Oh, God. Ridiculously, meticulously organized. This is it used to be the water heater. We went tankless and I reclaimed the space. And
it's awesome.
And those are all Lego minifigs, and many of them are non-Lego, like fake or third-party.
I remember you talking. I remember you were on a stream that you were talking about how there's a lot of Lego people that will not buy the knockoffs.
No, of course
not. You said that you have a few really good knockoffs.
Yeah, like come on, man. Like Lego, I'm sorry, has never done a xenomorph. Lego will never do a battle damage Ripley. Right? Or those random things from Prometheus so that they tried to explain where the xenomorphs came from. Or Godzilla, the man of the hour or the beast of the hour at the moment. And then as far as Marvel, like this was before Marvel took off, but like no way in hell were we going to get these versions of Spider people at the time. But now that they're Spider-Verse, we are. So it was kind of like one of those things where it's like, dude, they're making figures that Lego would never touch. Lego's very like clear on their brand presence. For the longest time, it was like no guns, like
really
minimal violence. Yeah. And then so they got away with it. Like Star Wars, a lot of the original stuff, like even to this day, you make brick built guns, but that's why there have been like these whole other third party folks like Brick Arms who literally like they're the Gridiron Studios of Lego.
Oh, wow.
And that's all they do. And you know how people are with weapons. Like it's like meticulously detailed and like they know what they're replicating and so
Random wants to know, did she ever finish that?
Yeah, we finished it together. I think we did like 5 episodes and she finished it and it's on display. It's on where she does her well, she moves around a lot whenever she's streaming, but it's there sometimes in her background. It's a beautiful set.
I hope it's easier for to put together than the
well, there's Matthew. Matthew's got the Brick Arms.
Yeah, Matthew has everything.
Right, but he knows.
All right, so other than like,
well, hold on. I'm curious. Have you ever met Matthew in real life?
No.
Oh yeah, it's fascinating. We have this new reality, right? Of all these like folks, our friends.
Matthew was the first person in on my first Monday night stream. I think it was my Monday night. Because I didn't start off on Monday. I did two episodes before. So my first Monday, I hadn't even named it yet. And I had only talked to Matthew because of the Full Force.
Okay.
And we started talking, and he was the one that, because he's moderated other things and he has some film experience. And he would throw ideas at me, and I would ask him, like, I bounce things off him because I don't have a problem like with someone giving me constructive criticism. Like he, I may not agree with it, and I like to discuss, like if someone says, hey, why don't you do this? There may be a reason why I don't, or there may be a reason like, hey, you know what? I didn't think about that. There's a lot of things. If it wasn't for Matthew, I'd probably still be reading the chat on my fucking live streams, completely lost. one of the first and best advice he gave me is ignore the chat. And he was like, I don't mean ignore it, but don't read everything. You're
Sure.
doing something on your own. There's no way that you can keep up with it, especially as it gets crazier. And
Yep.
it's gotten
Yep.
crazier. Like I said, the I'm averaging on a Monday night anywhere from 1,300 to about 1,500
By you.
in chats, and there's more than enough times I pull up chat and realize, oh, they're in a conversation.
Right.
Then you get stuck trying to figure out what the conversation is. When in
Yeah.
actuality, it's like I'm doing this alone. I can't be sitting here watching it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep. Yep.
but no, I've never got to meet him because he lives in Texas.
Okay.
So I'm in Michigan.
Yep.
I would love to. I mean, I was kind of hoping that I would have won this thing in Jersey and ended up in Dallas for a week.
Oh.
Or for a couple of days. I would have taken a few extra days, but so I gotta ask, what did Shark say here?
Oh,
Full Force is what brought me to your channel, Lawrence, and your channel to Bricks.
Thanks.
That sounds very homoerotic. But I'm
beautiful.
okay with it.
Love is love.
So you are okay. So
What's up?
you're obviously big into
Where are we at? I have no idea. Where are we at?
I know it's almost 3 hours.
We're good.
It's about to be Friday for me.
Uh-huh.
Shark is in the future. He's already there. So you're obviously big into Lego.
Uh-huh.
What else are you collecting?
So I'm into Lego, but I can't do Lego and the figures. So I actually haven't bought much at all. I buy, my kids were into it and they still kind of are, but they're 10 and 12. We have so many and they even know that. And I'm glad they recognize that. They're like, no, like, what do you want for the holiday? Their, grandparents are asking, they're like, do you want more Lego? And they're like, oh, we have so many Lego. Like, I don't know.
Dad's
like,
name is Brick something.
So yeah, and I think so I haven't really been I can't buy both. And so I can barely buy. I shouldn't be buying the things that I'm buying, man. And you said that one time. You're like, come on. About? Yeah, I forgot one time you mentioned like, come on, what do you mean you can't buy that? And so to clarify, like there is money available to do that, but like, should I? And I have to think of other things. And like, I'm looking at, oh man, it's kind of wild. Like, because the lines that I do buy now, one, I will just tell you, I'm not a completist.
You're so lucky.
Yeah, I'm not a completist, and I think maybe it's the punk rock reaction to my parents trying to create those rules. You must get Star Wars, and they did, because I'll tell you, our Star Wars thing is pretty much like maybe 90% complete, maybe higher than that. And then G.I. Joe was up until that year. But, well, I don't know. G.I. Joe we were less religious with. But so I don't do it. I'm just dabble. Like, I'm curious about stuff. I love the art form. So that led me to, it all started back when Masters, well, everybody was looking at toy stuff, it seems like. When I talked to people, like when it came to lockdown and pandemic, it was like more and more of us were looking for some kind of peace and solace, and maybe we're going back to our childhood days and looking for some nostalgia or whatever, right? And then it was just like, oh wait, I can buy oh yeah, I guess I could buy these things right now. And then it was like right around that time, shortly before it, they had announced that Masters of the Universe is coming back, and then it was Origins. And for me, it was also, I guess, classified G.I. Joe, and I was like intrigued by, like, oh my god, these things that I was growing up with are coming back. And I was especially intrigued by classified because they're coming back in a different form. Like, G.I. Joe's always been there. Like, you can get 3.75, and they kind of kept releasing things throughout. And I was just like, that's cool. I had the ones that I grew up with. And so I never felt that, like, it was just maybe less sexy to me. You know what I mean? It was kind of like, kind of been there. Oh, yeah, I did that. That's cool.
I get it, man. That's
kind
of how I feel now. Like,
and then all of a sudden it was like, wait, these G.I. Joe are bigger and they're redesigning them. Ooh, you know, or like that's why even with Origins, I was kind of like, oh, that's cool. They're coming back, but it's like it's kind of the same thing. Sure, they move better, and I know people love that, but that just wasn't my thing. And then they announced Masterverse and Revelation was kind of like, oh, like what's that about? And I totally was aware of. I've never stopped paying attention to toys, especially with the internet. I've always followed toys. I've always been around people, other people in my life, whether it was my brother or other friends that were collectors. And so, like, I knew it was out there. I knew that Masters Universe Classics was a thing. I was at San Diego Comic-Con when they first sort of like the first time when it's like Four Horsemen, like, wait, what is this Four Horsemen like He-Man figure? Like, what's that about? And no one understood it. And then eventually they worked with Mattel to do this line. And so I was totally aware of it, following the stuff, but just couldn't partake. And then by the time of the pandemic, like what my kids are older, 8 and 10 or so, like, you know, we figured out how to manage money for the most part. We'd landed in a house finally. We bought this place in 2019. And so it was kind of like, I feel a lot more stable and can maybe explore paying for other things, you know? And stupidly, like truly, admittedly stupidly, but not dissing folks. That's my thing. But then the Masterverse stuff came out, and the first thing that finally landed in my house that I could get my hands on was Battle Cat. And that was a dangerous eye opener of like, it was huge. It moved. The first Battle Cat that I'd seen, I never had him, but my cousin had him, was literally a statue that was literally a copy of a toy from the 70s or whenever the Big Jim thing was. It was like, okay, now this thing could move. It was articulated. You could, you know, like, and then the He-Man came out. And to me, again, like I didn't handle a ton of classics. I knew enough to be like, no, I totally get why people are concerned maybe about the design of it versus say classics. But I was also like, this is literally a brand new toy line. Where's it going to go later? It's the same thing I said about Classified when people were upset about it. It's like, you know, listen to a band's first record. That's probably not a thing to say to a punk because the first stuff is always better. But I think like, yeah, with I just was intrigued by like, oh my God, there's bicep swivel and there's all this stuff and there's all this detail in the sculpt. And then of course I'd been paying attention to the Mythic Legions thing. That was always intriguing to me because again, I think the punk rock background in me was intrigued when I'd heard that the dudes who were designing back in the day for McFarlane or whatever were kickstarting a thing. Like, what's that about? Like they're just raising money on their own. They're not relying on some corporation to put something out. They're doing it themselves or creating their own world and their own line. And they're doing it the way they want to do it. Punk rock. And so, by that time I was like, it's like February 2021 or so, there was a deal. They were doing these Legion builders. I don't know how familiar you are with Mythic Legions and they're sort of like the way they structure the line, but they do like cheaper army builder figures that are intentionally cheaper, $25. I was like, wait, I thought these were supposed to be expensive toys for $25. And it's totally deceiving because, you know, so that was my first thing. I was like, cool, I'm going to order this dwarf and this goblin, $25 each. And those are minimal paint compared to another Mythic Legions thing. But I was still like, damn, these things are gorgeous. The sculpt is gorgeous and they move and all this stuff. Totally spoiling. Cause then you're like, pre-order for a $35 Mythic Legions figure. Again, not that bad. Or you go to BBTS, $45. Like, whoa, that's different. But then you get these figures in hand and you're like, wait, these are even better than those Legion builders I had. They have like head to toe paint. And you're like, and so, yeah, man, then you're down the road. Like you're getting, you know, your friend in Canada who's going to Legions Con to go pick it up and you're going to meet him in Canada to bring it home. Like, what are we doing with our lives, Lawrence? But so what am I collecting now? It's mainly figures. I think the Masterverse is still a thing. I realized, what is it? Canal dos Mineros out of Brazil or whatever. They put out on their Instagram like a checklist. And I was like, I'm not a completist, but I looked at it. I was like, I think there were only 4 that I haven't gotten. But moving forward, like there are things that I'm getting less interested in, but like I have a bunch of them. And like, you get to a point where you're like, wait, why am I buying this when I know that like I could spend the same money on something that I want more, or that in my brain is better, that I'm more interested in. So I'm slowing down on those. I'm picking and choosing much more. Then there's the Mythic Legions, which has now become, if you're following this stuff, it's like Mythic Legions / Figure Obscura / Cosmic Legions, which is dangerous as hell. But again, I got to pick and choose. But then they announce something in November, and you're like, I got to go all in. So, and then Animal Warriors of the Kingdom, which is one of my favorite things. But again, I actually haven't gone all in on them. I all in on wave 1, wave 2 mostly. Didn't get anything of wave 3. And then I do the third party, well, what they call third party or bootleg, or some of it's just like straight up import. It has nothing to do with any other IP, but stuff on like 5K Toys or Gundamit or whatever. I don't really do a ton of like SHF Figure Arts or any of the like typical import stuff because of scale. That's my thing, is all my figures generally have to look like they could work together. So like Mythic Legions end up being in a weird 6.5 inch
I was
scale.
gonna say, aren't they a little bit smaller?
They're a little smaller than some Masterverse, but like, but they work, especially because like some of them are like not
Aren't
human.
AWOC built off a 7 or 6?
They're taller.
But they're built off a 6-inch scale, aren't they? Aren't
That's
they
what they
taller?
say, but like, I mean, I don't know. I haven't met any humanoid monkeys, but
That's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, they mix well with the GI Joes just for the fact that they're animals.
if you see them as bigger beasts, sure.
Yes.
Yeah, but like they look fine with a Mythic Legions. I've even got some random like McFarlane things in there that are like will work.
So you look more at a 7-inch scale is what you
anywhere between 6 and 7, and like the 6, like I have some I actually have some Marvel Legends that I've mixed in, but they're like smaller. I was just like, oh, they're smaller people.
Really, Wolverine's the only one you could use because he's supposed to be tiny.
Sure. No, but like, yeah, I've got like the Namor from the movie, but like he's kind of like a little tiny elfish kind of thing. Like, okay, that works. Whatever, dude. It's all fantasy in my brain. And like at the end of the day, it's this weird like world of like science fiction and fantasy, kind of that. It's basically like Masters of the Universe, right? Where they took high fantasy and science fiction. So nice.
Yeah, I everyone said like once you get Mythic Legions, you're gonna go down that road. I didn't. I mean, I like what I have, but I don't feel like I have to go buy them all. I mean,
and no one ever should. That's I'll tell you right now. That's a scary part of completionism. You and I, like we talk about being straight edge or whatever, and part of the sort of straight edge thing is like also just like addiction in general, or things like having more control than you is a scary thing, right? And the second you tell yourself, I'm a completionist, like the rule dictates your buying now. And you're like, I have to buy that character, or like, I don't like that character. I think it's ugly. I don't give a, but I mean, it's part of the line, so I need to get it. And I was like, dude.
That fucking number.
Yeah, that's right. I need to get 80 and 81 and 82.
People have asked me if I'm a completionist when it comes to classified. And I tell them, I go, I am till I'm not. And what I mean by that is when I finally miss out on something and I'm not able to get it, then I'd probably be able to say, you know what? I just don't really want that one.
Mm-hmm.
But I've liked everything that's come out for the most part.
Yep.
Falcon is the only thing that's absolutely hideous. And believe me, the designer feels the same way.
Oh, I've heard you talk about it, and I know I would say it's objectively true that figure is ugly.
It is bad. It is bad. That's why like when I hear people try and defend it, I'm like, the fucking designer doesn't even want to look at it. Enough said. Okay. but no, I'm with you. Like the Nemesis Enforcer, I'm like, but like I never liked Serpentor, right? I never cared for Serpentor, but the figure is amazing.
Yep.
All
Yep.
right, obviously sitting right there.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't mind Serpentor. I really didn't like Cobra Law, but there are figures that I didn't think that I would like. I see them designed and I'm like, wow, that
Yep.
looks awesome.
Yep.
So um yeah. But I've said numerous times collectors shouldn't have children because they think that their kids need everything. And just remember the Care Bear thing that I mentioned about my ex, and she's like, she doesn't care about that last one. I'm like, but she has all of them but one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I never found that one, and I don't even know where
Yeah.
the other 9 are or 8, whatever it was that we had. Probably
I've
downstairs.
I've used this line before. I'm like a curator. That's the way I look at it. Like people in a museum are putting together a thing.
I
I'm
think,
putting together a display and I'm picking the ones that I think fit in that display. And the challenge is honestly when you get these toy companies, especially now that are like they keep pushing, like they pushing the craft. That's the thing that's why I'm
yeah,
so stuck on the indies is because they're trailblazing in many ways. And so when I look at Four Horsemen in particular, I think in many ways, like they have really driven and defined this whole like indie toy thing. So anyway,
no, I'm right there with you, and I actually think curator is um, a really good term to use
hmm
because that's really what you're doing. I mean,
hmm
you've heard people talk about like they're not just toys; they're actually little pieces of art. Because let's be honest, most people aren't playing with their toy. I mean, you might be doing photography, and Payne would say, "Yeah, that's considered playing," but you're not
sure.
playing like we played GI Joe. That's why when I got that first A walk, I just remember thinking, if I gave this to a kid,
hmm
it's not coming back broken.
Yep. Yep.
That is a sturdy ass
Yep.
figure.
Yep.
It's gonna stand up because it has big feet.
Yeah.
Um,
It was Thane.
if I gave it classified, it's not coming back.
Was it the gorilla? Thane?
No,
Which was
no.
it? Pale.
Uh, yeah, Pale was the first one I got because of the Mohawk.
Yeah.
I got Pale. I ordered actually 2 or 3. I actually think I ordered 3.
Uh-huh.
I got Pale, and then I think 2 guards,
hmm
and then I got Blight because I just like the color of them. And I
Yep.
have that hyena on order along with one of the tigers. I think
Uh-huh.
I don't know their name.
Tiberius, probably.
I
Yeah.
love the hyena. When I saw the hyena at PowerCon, I was like, that one's coming home with me.
Yeah, man. I think the indies are pushing it, and so that's where the struggle is. Like when in November, and Four Horsemen does it to me all the time because like I shouldn't be collecting these. There's only so much space, but it's like they announce these things, and you're just like that actually is like unless you're in a different country or whatever, and there's shipping issues, it's the cheapest way you're going to get those toys. And
Yeah,
here's the thing about, and like I'm not like a big speculator or nothing. But I know that if I try and sell my Masterverse figures, I'm not going to get the money that I spent from them unless I got them clearance. Any Horseman figure, like I can get the money I paid,
yeah.
if not potentially more. So that's why sometimes with a Horseman like all in or whatever, like I feel less bad about it because at any point I'm like, I don't need this figure,
And
whatever. I move it
and so
along.
what much of what you said was much of what you said applies to, again, if someone wants to pay extra money to get stuff overseas early,
hmm
like Bobby B does, I was
hmm
doing, and some other people, it's your money. You spend
Sure.
however you want. I
Yeah.
looked at everything, and once I got monetized, and it was like, all right, GI Joe is really the only thing that makes me money. It doesn't even make me a lot of money, to be honest.
hmm
But I looked at it as like, well, can I offset the costs?
Sure.
And when I bought all those figures from Return of the Nerd, unfortunately for me, one box got hung up in customs, so I got it late. The other one came in, but then they started showing up. So people had already got the reviews out. Now I'm kind of already in the algorithm. My name is in the algorithm for G.I. Joe, not for Master of the Universe. That's like a screeching halt. But I also make more because YouTube has no rhyme or reason for what they pay out, like what their ads are paying out. It makes no sense whatsoever. But I have to offset it, and I've been looking at everything, and it's like, all right. I look at some of these figures. If you look at I paid $66 for Hawk and Shockwave from CMD store. So they were $66. They're supposed to be $25 each, right? That's shipping and everything. Right? So that's shipped to me. In the end, I looked at it as of a couple of days ago. I paid $5.50 for each figure. That's how much money I made off it. So kind of like what you're saying with Mythic Legions, yeah, I can turn around and I can sell those and get my money back.
Sure.
G.I. Joe was like that at first, and now you're kind of looking at these prices that have dropped. And you're going, oof, yeah.
Can't really in the aftermarket, you mean?
Like $20-$25 back.
Yeah, yeah.
But then I look at these early figures, the Duke, Scarlet. They're not making them again.
Sure.
And nobody wanted them.
Yep.
So they're going for a nice secondhand price if I wanted to sell them. I don't want to sell my stuff. I'll probably start boxing some of the stuff back up and putting it back on the wall with like the new Duke and Scarlet and everything coming out because I'm starting to look at it. I've run out of room.
Yep.
There's no other way. I've run out of room.
Yeah.
So, but I do find it interesting the stuff that you're collecting. I love what you guys are doing. And again, it's something different. So we're running it. I got to go to bed eventually.
No, for sure.
So for your YouTube.
Oh God, YouTube. Yeah.
Where do you see your channel? Where do you want to take your channel?
Oh man, I'm not at all trying to be like faux punk rock or nothing, but I don't have a ton of plans for it. I'll tell you that right now. I really just don't, and I'm sort of figuring it out. It's an outlet. It's fun. It's allowing me to I get to regularly talk about something I like. That's good for one's mental health, I think. And then, I'm building a thing and just feeling the sort of joy and the pride of oh, people are into it. It's tiny, barely crossed 500 a year ago or on the year anniversary or whatever. I think we're at 6 something now, or I'm at 6 something now.
You've shot up pretty quickly.
Yeah. I mean,
I just happened to look. I looked a little while ago at where you were, and then I happened to look when I was going and getting your stuff, and I'm like, wow, he shot up pretty good. Probably buying subscribers like Viper Island.
How or why do you do that? You said that the other day, and I was like, what? Anyways, and that's the other thing. I'll tell you right now, I don't understand enough. When you're saying the algorithm and it pays for this or whatever, I just honestly haven't had the bandwidth to understand it or try to figure it out. So I don't even have a concept of how much money one could make. So I always just talk about it in the plural, but it's basically me. And it is me, but we monetize, and then I forgot to like tell anyone or anything about it. And then all of a sudden I'm in a stream and like, I think it was Ken and other folks, like friends, they're like, oh, we can do super chats now. And like that, those are the only money I've had. And so it's sat there and it's like, oh, there's that money that they did. And it's like, I don't have a concept of it. So when you ask me like, where do you want it to go? I don't know. I don't know. But, and I've gotten a lot of folks have offered advice and some thoughts that I've like heard of, just like, be careful of like trying to do too many things or not having any clarity of the identity of the thing, because the algorithm needs to algorithm kind of needs to pigeonhole you so that it knows to send people your way, essentially.
Yes.
I don't know. Is that fair? Okay.
That's a very fair description of it.
And the challenge for me, dude, as based on our conversation, like, And there's so much we didn't even talk about tonight, but like I like a lot of stuff. Like, and it can go all over the place. But I will tell you, like, what I finally figured out is I need to have some regularity with it. And so I was doing everything from like random, like, let's explore this character and this figure, or let's do unboxings. But at the end of the day, I need some regularity. That's where I landed on the Sunday thing, because trying to figure out, okay, when are people streaming? When's a good spot for me to kind of be there? And the reason, like, I always, like you were saying earlier, like, oh, we talked, but we had to end it. I end it because it ends right before GDL and Just Shelve It and Hella Dope and other, I'm trying to remember who else, but there's other folks on Sunday night.
Yep.
And then there's folks before me. So I'm like, okay, hey, you've watching that, you might as well just jump over here, and then you're going to jump over to GDL anyways. So it was just sort of like that. And I want a container because I want to do what you're doing like this. I want to be able to meet new people and talk to people. And one of my favorite things to do is, yeah, we talk about toys, but like kind of tailor it to who the person is coming on. And just sort of like, hey, I offer, like, what do you want to look at? And I remind them it's called the news, but it's not really like
Yeah.
news, but like anything you want to talk about, like super geeky, you want to geek out, something you're excited about. It can be toy adjacent, it can be art, it can be comics, movies. And so it's created this container that I can then just tell people about, and just say, this is a thing that I do with regularity, come Sunday, whatever. And I'm always looking for people like, hey, would you come? And it just gave me a reason to, like, something to invite people to, you know what I mean? Rather than like, come
Oh,
my YouTube channel. Great. What do you do? I don't know, but just come. Like, it's like, that's hard to convince someone like they should do it.
yeah, and like
So,
I mean, I know it was before I'd really met you,
mhm.
that when you were on with Pain, and you're
Uh-huh.
like, hey, I'm just doing whatever, I just want to do. I'm like, yeah, well, and you guys kind of like push back. You're like, I'm just doing this for fun, but it's like, I understand because I was doing the same thing you were.
Sure, of course.
But as you start to create this community,
Uh-huh.
because I'm sure you have your own community as I have my own community,
Yeah.
and we all do. You start to go, okay, you know what? I have somewhat of a vision. There's certain things that I do want to accomplish. It doesn't have to be financially. It could just be like I just enjoy doing this and I want to
Mhm.
take this to a different level.
Sure.
Um and yeah, again, I will say this, what you said about I'm doing Sundays,
Mhm.
and this is what time we start, and then it
Yep.
basically leads up. It sounds like you want to get off before some of the some of the other people just take your viewers. I know
Well,
that one.
sure. And to be fair, it's because I want to watch GDL, and I want to,
Yeah,
yeah, because that's what I was doing on my Sunday evening. So it's like,
uh,
yeah,
yeah, and like Sunday, I specifically didn't pick Sunday or Tuesday because of toy anxiety
yep,
and GDL.
yep.
And I looked at Wednesday. That's the day we're supposed to skateboard. So I'm like, all right, I don't want to do that. Uh, Thursday was originally Olivia was in gymnastics on Thursday, so I didn't want to be rushing around. Friday,
Mhm.
I just think is a bad day because I guess if you are in a relationship or whatever, you're probably not going out all the time, you know.
Mhm.
But as someone who's
That's
single, if I
so,
ever do want to
mhm.
date again, Saturday and Sunday are 2 days that probably work out the best.
Uh-huh.
So it all came back to Monday. Everything
Uh-huh.
came back to Monday, and I knew that I'd have to go up against wrestling. I didn't
Uh-huh.
really worry too much about Monday Night Football
Yep,
because
yep.
I don't think that there's a huge crossover with football and toys. But wrestling, there's a
Right.
huge.
Yeah. Monday
And
Night Raw.
I will say this: like everything that I've done with the live streams, it was carefully planned out. I mean, they may have changed, but I was like, okay, Mondays 9 o'clock.
Yep.
This is we're gonna do it. A couple hours.
Yep.
That maybe 2 hours turned into 3 hours, then 3+ hours.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's now, I mean, there's 60 people still watching
Mhm.
after midnight here. And I see people coming in.
Yep.
Thursday, when the whole Punks on Film started, it was like every other week.
Yep.
It seemed like such a good idea, and I enjoy doing it. So does Matthew. everyone was talking about all these movies, and then no one wants to come over, and we're like, you son of a bitch. But at the same time, we're enjoying it, and I know I really enjoyed doing the whole ranking how we did it. Like it was just kind of fun, but you
Mhm.
can't rank every single week.
Right.
And then after that, I was just like, you know what? This whole this whole show came because I've always watched people in chats,
Yeah.
and you chat with them, and I'm just like, what? Like, what's their story? Like,
Right.
who
Right.
are they? Like, oh my
Right.
god, like they have a channel. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And it was just like once I started seeing my community grow, I was like, I want to have something where I talk to people that are part of my community that are helping
Mhm.
me. I want to
Mhm.
help them out. Like if they want to have, if if you don't want to do it, then hey, don't feel bad. It's like, no, I
Right.
don't really want to go on. My
Yeah.
only thing that I've said, and this hurts because I'd love to have Chaz on, is I'm not going to talk to an avatar for 3 hours.
Oh,
I can't. Like I have to see your face. There's
sure.
got to be interaction. Like there has to be interaction, and but that was the whole purpose of doing this. And a lot of people have. I think people have the response that I've gotten has been really good, and it's
Yeah.
not what other people are doing. Everyone wants to have someone come on and just talk toys, and I'm like, that's all we do is talk toys. Every streamer with toy tubers.
Mhm.
I'd rather get to know the person, and yeah, we'll get the toys eventually because it's still part of who we are.
Yeah.
But I want to find out, like, like, oh, and then you find out, like, oh shit, so you played fucking football at college for a little bit. That's actually pretty cool. Why aren't you doing any more? Like, different things like that. And there's been some dark ones, then there's been some pretty lighthearted ones.
Sure.
But every one so far, in my opinion, has come off really good. My biggest fear still, and I haven't had this yet, my biggest fear still is I get someone on that doesn't want to talk. It's like pulling teeth, and there's no. And again, so a lot of this goes back to Jim Rome. Jim Rome does, a 3 hour show by himself. Yeah, he has guests come on, but all his producers and everything say very little. It's pretty much him. And I've watched how he does things. I'm like, I want my things to be a little bit different. And I didn't plan on doing a show alone on Monday. I planned on bringing someone on.
Mhm.
Once it started rolling, I was like, I don't. And doing a show with someone can be difficult.
Sure.
Sometimes you talk over each other. Uh, honesty, Geek Dead Life is not the same without John on right now. I don't really enjoy it.
Huh.
Uh, I've seen other guests. I mean, I like when Dole's on, but
Mhm.
there's just something about when John's on it, their chemistry. Everyone else, I'm just like,
Well, yeah, I think that's the thing. No, it's true. It's true in the sense that, like, yeah, if you watch a thing and you're used to it and you like the chemistry, like, and you're going there to like experience this thing, and then it changes, of course, yeah, it's is it's different. I was thinking about that too. Tuesday, I don't know if you caught Toy Anxiety, but it was one of the bootlegs where everybody's gone, but Dole runs it, so it's bootleg.
so I
Did
I
you see
I
it or?
I started watching it.
Uh-huh.
Well, I started watching the replay. I
Uh-huh.
usually always like watching the bootleg ones, but my daughter and I were actually watching um, Elemento. Elemento? Yeah. We were
Elemental.
watching some Disney movie. New Disney Elemental.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I haven't watched that one yet. That's a fire and the what
Yeah.
and the yeah,
That's
yeah, I
a
haven't seen it.
pretty it's a good one.
I'm gonna check it out. But the when I saw it, I was like, dude, I love those guys. I love Ryan, always hilarious, and just like, with his experience and his insight and stuff, like, okay, that's cool. Kevin from Toying Around, who I love, is also like one of my favorite YouTubers, him and the Enablers or whatever. Um Jay from GDL, who like clearly is I'm into that and I'm part of the Discord and all that. And then freaking Dan Larson, right? So like these are all people that I think are amazing. And I was like, oh my God, I even said that. I was like, dude, this is not a bootleg. This is a glow up. Like, this is amazing. And it wasn't a diss to Craig and
Yeah.
them at all. It was more like, oh my God, I can't believe all these people are here. And then about 20 to 30 minutes into it, it wasn't a bad show at all. But what I realized is like, oh yeah, I love all these guys, but like now all these guys aren't used to being with one another, so they're kind of like trying to figure it out and trying to, and like it's always hard. It's like watching, like you might think, oh my God, how cool would it be to have Paul McCartney and I don't know, God, every person I'm thinking of is dead, and that's messed up, but like whatever. So Paul McCartney and whatever, Dave Grohl and Amy Mann, whoever, right? And you put them all, and that's going to be an amazing band. Like it's not. Like
Yeah,
they're gonna try and struggle and figure things out, even though they're wonderful separate, but they have to figure out that dynamic. And of course, yeah, that's what I think Jay's struggling with. And it's not that they're bad, because it was great and I love
no,
listening to them. But then I was actually messaging Craig this morning, and I was like, hey, like missed you guys. Like I told him the same thing. I love those guys, like every one of them. But like we watch Toy Anxiety because there's a dynamic between those four friends and the way they talk to
yes,
each other. It's like cool. And so I think that's what you're picking up on between Jay and John. Obviously, like they have a dynamic, and yeah, I think it's definitely been different. You know, and I have probably, you know, played a no, just having been able to do that one, I was
yeah.
super flattered when he asked. But like I was like, I know, like I was on there, I was like, hey, this is cool, I'm glad I'm here. Like I know there are folks in the thing who are like, who the hell is this guy?
It-
And like, where's
and that's
John? You know what I mean? I get it.
yeah. Again, when it comes to the chemistry, and the chemistry is hard. Like you
Yeah.
have to, because some people will continue to talk. They don't know they need to stop and
Hmm.
let someone else talk.
Hmm.
I know when I go on other shows, like I
Hmm.
try not to. I dominate stuff because I do 3+ hours on my own, right?
Right.
So I try not to dominate. When I'm on, this one was a little different because we had a lot of back and forth of stuff to talk about. But I
Hmm.
usually try and lead through it. But you and
Hmm.
we've been
Yeah.
talking so much about the music, and then I think it went to a different place with the music, which is fine because
Yeah.
that's what conversations are. It's amazing. You
And
can
it
have a
actually is a huge part of my life. So
yeah, and you can have a conversation and feel different
yeah.
and not be mad at each other and hate each other.
Mm.
But yeah, like unfortunately with Geek Dad Life, I'm very I'm bored with it right now. I don't
Well,
I just it's just the chemistry is not there, you know. It's disappointing because I really do like it. Um, and again, it doesn't mean that someone is bad on it,
sure.
but it's just like you can tell when people have chemistry and it flows and they know when to talk and when not to talk. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And Jay's a musician, so I think he would totally understand, because it's like, yeah, you've been playing in the band for so long, you replace a band member, it's going to take a while, you
Yeah.
know?
And then when you talk about like toy anxiety, it's not. I mean, yeah, there's 4 people there. 2 of them are in the exact same room.
Right.
So
That's right.
so
Yeah.
there you have 2 of them that know not to step over each other's toes for the
Sure.
most part. Like, so it's almost like there's 3 people, but with 4.
Yeah. Yeah.
But their chemistry is just so good. I mean, it
Yeah.
really is. Um, but anyway, I don't even know how we got here. Uh,
We've said that a lot, man. It's conversation, it's hanging out with
that,
friends and talking about the
yeah,
things we like.
that's
So
all my live stream. So Oz's streams are rough with the talk over at times, but it's kind of of a training exercise. One thing with Oz's streams too is there are some people that don't really even talk; they just sit there,
mhm.
and they're almost taking up a spot. I probably shouldn't be saying this because it probably upset some people, but sometimes they're just kind of taking up a spot, and you're like, if you're not going to talk, why not bounce out and let someone who maybe
Yeah.
and it's nothing against the
Ooh, there's a
person.
cop. Yeah.
But also when been on the stream for 8 hours, sometimes you're like, I don't have very much more to talk about.
Yeah, I also think it's the nature of like that. I think that's where he landed on sort of like the clubhouse of like literally like we're just hanging out. Like we're just, it's a clubhouse. Come hang out. Not everyone needs to talk at the same time. But it's a sort of it's a clearly defined different experience. Whereas like when we do like Legion's class, it's like, oh well, we have like a purpose. We're trying to
Yeah.
do a thing. So yeah, and I think that's the thing, to go back to the channel you're asking me like what I'm going to do. Like I'm still figuring it out. unlike a lot of my other projects, like with the band, it's like, oh, we had a sense of like, this is what we are trying to do, and this is what, and then at a different point you want to grow, and this is the new thing we want to do, but it's more defined. For me, it's been an exercise for the channel in just sort of like exploring and trying to figure out a new thing. That's part of why it's fun and unique to me. And I kind of mentioned that, I teach, and I teach government and economics in particular. And it's just a different world that these are seniors are going to become adults in. And I remember a couple of years back having a student, this was 2 years before the pandemic. I was like trying to work with them to figure out like, hey, what are you interested in? And like, what do you want to do? And she was like, I want to be an influencer, and I want to, I want to make money. And that's what I want to do. I'm going to be on social media. And I was like, huh, that is totally a gap in my knowledge and understanding, right? I didn't know what that world is like. And so ever since that conversation, I've been paying attention to it. And then I started trying to work into it and like talk to people that I know that have been doing it, or are like, have some sort of like fame and thing for a thing they built up. Steve was one of them in my brain. And I, just talking to her about like, well, it's still hard work and there's all this stuff. I don't totally understand it. I understand some of the tech end of it, because one thing we didn't get to is sort of my graphic design and multimedia experience. But, and then so I was really curious. And then from there, I was like, well, I started working in a podcasting project in my class. I was like, well, that's not something I know, but like, yeah, these students should be getting some practical. That's when it's gone long, when my background loops have exhausted. But when like I wanted to give them some practical experience playing with tools that maybe they could get into, like learn how to do audio recording, learn to do a podcast, learn to frame a story. Ultimately, it's the same. Like there's skills involved. You need to write out a script, have a plan, identify what it is you're doing. And it's kind of become a thing now, at least in our district, of like podcast projects. So like, that's cool. I was like, well, what about YouTube? What about this? And that's when then we went into lockdown. Then all of a sudden I became a YouTuber without being a YouTuber, because I had to teach like 100+ kids every day on a freaking computer. And like, I had to figure out a way to keep their attention, because I don't know what's going on the other end. I had to manage a chat, because at a certain point, and we didn't want to force students to, I didn't want to force students to like turn on the cameras. That was something that our district was like clear on. Like, we don't know what's happening on the other end. We don't know what their background is. Like, why are we going to force students to be on camera? Like, and so it became this thing of like, I had to follow chats. Like, that's where I cut my teeth on following a chat and highlighting certain things and figuring out how to visually show, something while I talk, so that you're not just sitting here listening to me and looking at this face the whole time. It's like, dude, like, look, we're talking about toys. Let me show you toys. We're talking about this. Let me show you this thing and kind of talk you through it. And so eventually it just became natural. I was watching, I had been watching like Toy Galaxy for a while. I found all these other channels, found Kevin toying around. Then Jay and GDL, that I started watching that with some regularity, had some fun with people in the chat. And I was like, oh, you know what, why the hell? Why don't I check out this Patreon thing? And Discord. And I was like, oh, these people are cool. Yeah, no, this is a cool space. Like, people aren't shitty to each other. Like, sorry if that, but like, people are cool. And like, we're talking about this stuff. This is rad. And I was like, well, why don't you just put that on the thing? So the channel was born out of that, as well as I had an agenda, and I'll put that out there because I know people don't like it, but I'll be clear about it. I don't care. Like, if you want to know, like, what is something I want to accomplish, I will tell you that this was right around the time with Masterverse and Revelation, right? I'm sure you're totally familiar with all the love and embrace that the Masters of the Universe fans had with Revelation and Masterverse. Everyone was happy. No, right? Like, there was all this stuff of like,
well, okay, yeah. All right.
Yeah, like, wait, so I'll specifically name one thing, and it wasn't the only thing, but I remember people like, that's not my King Grayskull. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Why not? Right. And so again, I'm not going to assume, I'm not one of those who's like, oh, you just don't like him because you're racist. I'm not saying that at all. But there were plenty that were clearly that, because you could hear it in their narrative. And then I was like, I have been in spaces like punk rock where folks with more melanin in their bodies aren't the ones that people are hearing all the time. So there's this assumption that like what's normal in that thing are these same faces and voices that you're hearing. And like, for all the whatever talk, I know some people hear diversity or whatever woke, like that turns them on. But I'll just say that, like, hey, I wanted the first video on my channel is about that King Grayskull figure, and I just kind of want to talk about how rad it was, how it was a cool looking figure, how I worked with some dude out of Mexico who does these dope custom heads, and I wanted to give him some shine. And like I realized, like, hey, I just want to. I don't want to sit here and have people telling me how I'm supposed to think about figures and then be mad about it when I hadn't. Then if you don't like what they're saying, this is the same with punk rock, right? If you don't like what you're hearing, you don't like the corporate bands that are coming out, then do it. And that's how the Brick Something thing happened. And I didn't know what I was trying to do necessarily. I was just experimenting with content, and I've landed on this thing. Will it be all I do? No. And I'll tell you also, Allison definitely was inspiration too for the shorts. She's the one who's like, I was watching her doing her coloring thing in the shorts. I was like, oh, that's cool. Tell me more about it. Sort of telling me about like how, why she does it, and the algorithm. She asked me some thoughts on it. And I was like, hey, you know what? Like, part of me, in addition to talking about these things, I just kind of want to document these figures, because I'm not going to be able to keep buying them. And at some point I'm going to sell them. And like I told you, a lot of my like vintage stuff has been in like storage. I haven't touched them. I haven't seen them. Right. And there's no documentation of what we had.
Oh,
And then there's all those Japanese ones and some of those other odds and ends that I can't find. I have no idea where they're at. Or my sectars. That was one of the few ones that I got away with collecting. Love those, but I don't know where they're at. I want to be able to like have these things and record them and document them and be able to go back and look at them like you would old albums and photos or whatever. But I'm not going to have the space, and I'm probably going to have to sell them. And so I started doing the shorts and the turnarounds, and I try and do like these standard kind of like thing with them. So I'm doing all these shorts now on this like turnaround with a background, and it's just like I want to document all these figures, and like people are watching, and there's some regular, it's not huge numbers at all, but
yeah.
it's like I found that actually did help. Like when you were saying, I really do strongly believe that going to Sundays regularly and then doing shorts pretty regularly, almost daily, not quite every day, has helped. And then for me, the fun stuff is I look at my shorts page. I told you this before. I'm sorry if this is a rehash, but I look at it basically and I see the grid with all those figures and they're all kind of the same. It's like looking on the back of those. It's like looking on the backs of those vintage GI Joes back in the day.
Yes.
When you'd see there's the figure with the standard awesome burst in the back in a grid, and you're like, oh my God, that's rad. That's rad. And they're all like, I look at my thing and I was like, oh my God, this is my shorts feed has become a card back, and I love it.
Or the Star Wars where you kind of went through and
Yep.
they were all numbered underneath. 1, 2, 3.
Yep.
And you're like, oh, I have that one. I have that one.
Although Star Wars, they did that whole thing like kind of like your shelf, but it was like on a yellow background.
Yeah.
They stand them all up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that, I mean, I remember that like you wouldn't believe. All right. Well, where can everyone find you?
You can find me here at bricksomething.com. Go straight to the channel. I just want to show you, like, come on, dude, that's a card back. That's dope.
Oh, wow. Oh, I see what you're saying.
What's that?
No, what you're saying about the card back.
Oh, yeah, that now makes sense. Yeah, no, like literally, I look at the grid and it's like, oh, cool. Look, there's my action figure collection, and it looks like I remember that one. Bricksomething.com will take you basically to the channel. I got the URL. Again, that comes from my background and web stuff. But bricksomething.com take you straight to the channel. On Instagram,
there are links in the description.
There's that. and of course the IG, I'm there. Those are the main things. I started a TikTok again per Allison's lead. Just wanted to try it out. It's kind of rad. It's different. It's definitely a very different subject. It's a very different crowd. I'm
So
fascinated by it. So
I 100% agree with Mega J. Shorts are hard to do. The shorts that I put up are normally just the end the end when I kind of do
a
my
clip
final,
from your yep.
and that just came from the I did it and I was like, oh, if I just do this a minute, I just have it. I can just load it up a couple days later. And then I found out because they changed the shorts, you can link it to a longer channel or a longer video.
I
So now
saw
I
that.
just
I
go
haven't
in and
messed
I
with it.
link, you know, Hawk to the actual main review. So
And
yeah,
does that
it's
get
one of those.
suggested as the next thing? Is that what happens?
What?
Is that what gets suggested as the next video or something
No,
when you
so so
link
so
it?
so let's say you're watching it, and then it will
Uh-huh.
say, like, related video. So then I
Uh,
just hit it, and it sends me right over there, or it will send someone over. So they're like, "Oh, hey, this guy was talking Hawk. I wanna see what his whole review is." You can
mhm.
click it. Or let's say I do a short for this, and we do a quick thing on the punk rock.
Sure.
They see the short, and then if I took a clip of it, and then I could
I
just
get
link
you.
it.
Yep.
But I could just link something out of this,
Yep.
but it's a lot of work.
It's
And
all a
especially
lot of work. Like you've said this many times, and for anyone who doesn't believe it, running one of these things, thank you. I appreciate
yeah,
the subs, but like running one of these things is hard work. And I appreciate like metal toy box giving you that like
yeah. Thank you. I appreciate every super chat,
yeah.
every channel member. Uh, Thank you very much. And I know he's new to the channel,
Mhm.
so I definitely
That's
appreciate
rad.
it. Um,
But yeah, when I do that, I've done that too on certain folks, but it like literally uh where else do you like imagine you're watching a band? Like you can't go to some big concert and be like, dude, that guitar solo was cool. Let me give you this $5 right now. Like
yeah,
it's a different or you're watching the show, like, oh my God, the way they handle that scene right there, that actor's awesome. I want to give you money versus like, and of course a portion of it goes to what 70% or whatever goes 70% goes to the creator. But like man, we're in this age where like actors are striking, writers are striking because of like the lack of the treatment in terms of like, hey, we're moving into new media, but we're not getting any portion of it, and there's not even a conversation for that. These like this venue of me being able to just be like, I really like what Punk's doing. I like that he talks toys. I want to show him that. Like
yeah.
I'm literally just
It,
watching this thing.
it's tipping your waitress or your waiter,
Yeah.
and you tip more to someone that, oh, this one went out of their way. They made
Hmm.
sure, but at the same time, they didn't overstep and they weren't over me all the time.
Yeah.
Asking if I was okay. And it's like, listen, you just asked me 2 minutes ago. At the same time, I didn't have to look for you.
Right.
20 minutes later when I wanted the bill. And again, it is work, and I'm Mega J. I'm sure can tell you, you're learning this as like no
Mhm.
one sees behind the scenes how much we sit in this chair in front of our
Oh
computers.
yeah.
And hey, we also don't see the cameraman, for the TV shows and movies that we watch.
That's right.
But you're right. Like you can't I'm not going up to the guys at Pennywise and going, "Hey, here's a little bit of extra money." Uh,
Well, that
Especially
was
not.
the beauty of like punk. That it was to bring it all back, man. You go to a show, you get $5. Like I know there were some shady like bookers, but like at the end of the day, when we would do shows in like Steve's house, the pickle patch, like literally gives the money. Great. Hey band, here you go. Like that's where it went. And it's the same thing here, man. So for the most part, I know like YouTube gets its cut. The YouTube headquarters is like 7 minutes that way. um, but it's been fun. So like I've learned a lot. I can now speak to my students with some authority and experience about like how much work it is, what you need to do, what you should look, because they're always asking that. Like, are you talking about economics, right? Like, I don't care about this. Like, and I get it. They're like, I don't want to do that kind of job. What is this thing I'm hearing about influencers? Like, okay, cool, let's talk about it. And I should pay more attention to the things that you and Jay and other people are teaching me about the algorithm, so that I can speak more knowledgeably about that to the students, because I don't totally understand it.
There's so much.
Yeah. I've tried to watch some of the stuff on it, and it's cool, but it's like it's a whole thing.
Yes, Allison. I do have to go to.
Yeah,
We're gonna wrap it up though.
We should wrap it up.
Thank you to everyone that stuck around for almost 4 hours. Thank you
Appreciate
so much
y'all.
to you, Brick.
Yep.
I was really looking forward to this. I'm glad that it went. I don't want to say went off the rails, because I want it to be a conversation, and I think we had a really good conversation. People probably learned more and probably went, "God, you're just this asshole that is stuck on punk music." But I do like other things, just not as much.
No, it's like it's there in your name. I told you that at the beginning, man. Like, I just get excited to hear about things, especially when someone goes straight edge, because that's not necessarily something I hear enough of. No. But so anyways, there's that. And then I am curious though, because you said off the rails. Were there did you have questions? And is there anything you want to rapid fire?
So the whole point of this is pretty much to see from the beginning of your life and how you got to where you are now.
Yep.
And
so what you missed in there was a graphic designer, web designer, ended up starting my own business, somehow got into teaching, was an organizer, did some stuff in Oakland and here, and done. Cool. Got the whole thing.
That would have been a lot shorter. But I'm not known for short streams, so that's for damn sure.
Yeah, Matt, seriously, thank you for having me. I appreciate this, kind of just back and forth, this conversation. I love getting nostalgic with people about a lot of things. So whether it's toys or music or whatever, it's always a good time for me. So thank you. And thank you to everyone in the chat.
It was great. Tune into Brick. All the links are in the description. You're on Sundays at what time?
4:30 p.m. my time to 6, or 7:30 your time on the East Coast to 9. We usually won't go past that because, there's better shows to watch.
And to anyone that's been waiting to hear me talk about G.I. Joe today, we did not. But tomorrow, 10 p.m. Eastern, I will be on this channel.
Tomorrow. Sorry, you're talking like it's not today already over there.
I will be on today at 10 p.m. Bees Battleground, Dreadnought Ryan, and Aaron the Toy Enhancer, who is in the chat right now. I'm going to get out of here. And obviously Mondays, you know where to find me. But check Brick out, subscribe to his channel because it's good.
I appreciate that, man. I appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Night, folks. Thank you, man.
Technical difficulties. I hit something on my computer.